Oh, I'm. What's up, guys? Welcome to Lawsplaining the Interwebs. I'm your boomer host who does not know how to run his own show, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in Central Minnesota, and with me today is my new friend Antonio. We have been chatting a little bit, and I would like to introduce you to him. If you don't know, you guys probably know more about Antonio than me, but we're gonna have a little chat. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're here. The people who've been waiting in the chat have obviously seen the cover was kind of the background there. We're here to talk about some controversy. So we're gonna do that in a minute. But first, I want to kind of get started getting to know you a little bit, learning about your story, learning about your work, and then we'll let it lead straight into the controversy, and then we'll talk about all that, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, please, please. I'm an open book. Ask any question.
All right, man. The first question I've got is: are you in the chat? So
I am
people
in the
can.
chat
Okay, so can people tag you at? It's
at Akari Press.
okay. It's at Akari Press, which I'm gonna throw in the chat right now, just so you can find it. There you go, guys. Let me hit a couple. There's like two super chats waiting, so you know how you got to take care of that stuff real quick, and then we'll get going. So, True American Hero, long before the stream started, said, "You're my favorite alt right YouTuber now. It was good of you to help design the legal system for the ethno state." Well, thanks, buddy. Happy to be here. Happy to help out in any way I can, I guess. And then Bagel Goose just sent sexual chocolate. So I
Oh, I get that everywhere I go. I don't know why.
perfect. Well, hey, that's a good thing to get. I get worse things sometimes. So anyway, yeah, well, so you contacted me after the Friday show that I did. You mentioned that you had this controversy, and I've been looking at your stuff. You've got a very successful Indiegogo campaign. The comic is called Brand. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Yes. And so you guys, I'm going to say this now and I'm going to say it later. Uh, all the links for Brand are down in the description. You can follow Antonio on Twitter down there. Definitely check out his stuff. I mean, if you saw that cover, that is one sexy piece of artwork, and and the comic is very compelling. It's a sci-fi comic. Why don't you actually? You're gonna tell me about it because you're the expert.
Hmm. Well, okay. Well, Brand is about uh, it's a war. There's a war going on between heaven and hell, and there are a group of warriors that, or I call them hunters, and their job is to protect the earth from, interdimensional beings, ghosts, demons, vampires, all this kind of thing. They're trying to prevent uh, the stuff that you read about in the Book of Revelations from actually happening. They're trying to prevent the end times, and you got 7 billion people on the earth, and there's only 1,000 people that have this ability in our story. So yeah, 7 billion people, and there's only 1,000 of these warriors, and they're trying to, prevent the apocalypse from happening. But in their way is a group of weird characters. Some of them are this kind of my version of the Illuminati that I call the Covenant, led by this guy named Lionel Solomon. And then there is also uh, a doppelganger for Saint Nicholas or Santa Claus that I call Dark Santana.
Sure.
And Dark Santana is definitely someone that has uh, sparked a lot of interest from the supporters. He is, and obviously he sparked this particular controversy that I walked into the other day, which I was not expecting. When Brett Booth likened my cover to what was it? Threatening violence against all women, and then I saw people were like talking about rape culture and all this, and that wasn't the intent. Uh, I just I thought that the Mockingbird 8 cover, which obviously was controversial among comic book readers. Chelsea Kane was the writer on that book, and Joel Jones was the artist. and she, the book had gotten canceled from everything I read, they knew the book was about to be canceled,
Sure.
and so they said, "Hey, let's push some buttons." And so obviously, they decided to create this "Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda" shirt with Mockingbird instead of focusing on just telling a good story. Uh, that being said, they created it, and people were like, "Oh," and it actually, got some traction. People were seeing it. Obviously, the book was already canceled when they released it, but I thought that was just a dumb cover. So I had an idea as I was working on some of the plots and everything for the story. I was like, what if I have Santana actually appear in that same shirt? And so yeah, so I reached out to an artist named Jamie Biggs, who I had found on eBay. He was selling a lot of his original art on eBay, and I contracted him to do two pieces for us. One was Santana sitting on a throne of skulls, and then there was that one that you see there, which is the parody of the Mockingbird 8 cover. We sell a lot of t-shirts on TeePublic, and we also have our designs on Amazon.com. That's actually the "Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda" is our most popular design for whatever reason. So yeah, it's like I look on my Amazon, I look on my TeePublic, and it's like you've made a sale. So it's like that is that's crazy. So yeah, it's a little bit of
Okay, I have to clear something up. No, no, that is not a penis hanging out. That is a belt. That's a belt buckle, or a belt, guys. It's hanging
yes,
out on the
yes.
cover there.
And actually, if you look on the original Mockingbird 8 cover, she's got a belt buckle also, and it's got an M on it. We switched the belt buckle out, and if you've been following the story of Brand, you'll know that our characters use masks. They have, we have three color masks in my story. There are red mask, black mask, and white masks, and they're supposed to represent the Holy Trinity. Each mask has different abilities, like it's supposed to be mind, body, and spirit. So the white masks represent spiritual energy, and our lead character, David Craven, originally had a mask called Horus, and Horus uh, turned on him and partnered with Dark Santana. So that is Horus on the belt buckle there, and now David replaced Horus with a new mask called Penance, and so there you go.
Gotcha. So the three powers, is it like a rock paper scissors sort of thing where you've got one that counterbalances another, or do they just kind of work in concert? How's that work out?
I'd say they more kind of work in concert. Like David's master is a guy named Gaiman, and Gaiman there's only now, like I said, there's only 1,000 of these warriors. So of the 1,000, only 30 of them have the mask, and the 30 that have the masks are like a leadership council that I call the Chosen. The
Sure.
Chosen, the Chosen are broken up into three castes, and there are 10 members on each caste. So there's 10 red, 10 black, 10 white. At the beginning of Brand, David is about to take the place of a member of the Chosen. The Chosen are immortal. He doesn't, this member of the Chosen doesn't want to be immortal anymore. So David was selected to take his place, and that's why Horus was originally created. And David made some mistakes with him, and you know, but then they replaced him with Penance. But yeah, Horus and Santana are definitely some troublemakers. They are not good people, and it is like I said, the I would think the powers work more in concert together. It's like obviously if you were facing more of a spiritual enemy like a ghost or something like that, a demon, uh spiritual energy would be highly effective against them. But then some things like more maybe like a werewolf or something might want some strength to help you with that a little bit, maybe.
Sure.
And then then the black masks, those guys are more tricksters. They're able to cast illusions and use what I call shadow magic. So that's basically how that works.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that sounds like a wild book. So, guys, definitely check it out. Hit the link. Check out the Indiegogo. If you like it, obviously support it, because we're in this world, right? That's being built, and what I hate the cliche, but what a timeline we're in, where we've got we've got this old model, and this is something I really want to talk to you about because you're out there, you're making this comic. I want to talk to you about how you got there, but I mean, we're in this world where up until recently, I mean, to really have a shot at making a career, making a product that reached people, you had to go through some dude in an ivory tower, right? You had an editor, you had you submitted your pitch, and some poor schlub of an intern got promoted from the mailroom because the editor didn't want to read all of them, and he's got a stack of books, and he reads the first page to 10 pages, and he decides the entire quality of the work based on that, and then you've got like a 1% chance because of all the other people out there submitting good stuff, and it's not really about how good your book has ever been. You know, it's never been about that. If you don't have an in with the publisher, you've got this tiny marginal chance because you have to hit the right guy on the right day with the right attitude, and you got one shot to do it. But no more. No more do we have that. We now have Indiegogo, we have Kickstarter, we have Twitter, we have the ability to market to people. So what I would like to know from you is like what's it like being a creator out there today, um in this sort of thing? I mean, is this your first major publication? Is this a dream that you've always had? Tell me about how you got to here. uh
Uh,
yeah.
okay, yeah, that's an interesting story because uh, I started working on brand in 1998.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been building this world for like 20 years, but
I mean,
I'm
it sounds really fleshed out, but
oh yeah, I was just like I definitely put some time and effort into creating this story. Um, the basic thing is that obviously I have a traditional job, and over the last 20 years obviously I've been working. So what would happen is I'd kind of work stuff and write my notes, and then life would get in the way, um, and I just kind of would just kind of pick it up here and there and add stuff to it. 2016, uh, right at the end of the year, my mother passed, and I just started thinking, I was like, man, if I'm gonna finish this story, I don't want to keep doing this where I kind of go in and go out and come back in. I was like, I want to actually finish the story. So um, I started really working on that towards the end of 2016, 2017. I started looking for artists to create concept art,
Right.
and ended up making the acquaintance of some guy named Kanan White, who had done a book called Uber with a artist named a writer named Kyron Gillen, who does a book called The Wicked and the Divine. Uh, some years ago, he had been over, I think it was Avatar Press, and they had hooked up on Uber. It got a little traction there. Obviously, I know The Wicked and Divine is being turned into some kind of television show or something. But over at Avatar, Kanan also worked with Mel Brooks' son, Max Brooks.
Sure.
Uh,
Yeah, he's the guy who did
uh,
World War Z and stuff like that,
World War
right?
Z, absolutely. Yeah, he did World War Z. They teamed up on a book called Harlem Hellfighters, and that book was bought by Will Smith's production company. I know that's being turned into some kind of thing, I think, for the History Channel, some kind of little miniseries. Um, it's he was doing that. So Kanan has been doing these little projects, and then he hooked up with a guy named Jay Longino, uh, and that's when he went over to Image Top Cow Studios and hooked up with Jay Longino for a book called Son of Shaolin. And Son of Shaolin was bought by Dwayne the Rock Johnson, and they're turning that into something. I know Jay Longino had that Uncle Drew movie out a couple months ago with Kyrie Irving dressed up like an old man dunking on people and stuff. So yeah, so that's but yeah, The Rock is turning uh Son of Shaolin that Kanan did. I know Kanan's going to get some little royalties from that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
that's good stuff.
so he just kept doing these little projects and stuff, and obviously, um, I just started out as a client, but I kept, I would have him draw concept pieces for. But I also reached out to other artists. I reached out to another artist in the Philippines by the name of Jimbo Salgado, who is doing a book called Ravage Kill All Men with Chuck Dixon.
Yep.
Um, and so there, Jimbo Salgado did a piece for us, and then I kept going back to Kanan. For whatever reason, Kanan used to be a graphic designer, and so he just seems to have he just seemed to have a knack for uh, just creating characters. I just like the way his mind worked, his eye. Uh, so he just seemed to really have a knack for creating characters, and he can take criticism. That's one thing I like when I work with Kanan is that everything he turns in isn't gold. I'm like, I don't like that idea. But that's the thing. Some artists get bit out of shape when you tell them you don't like something. Kanan can take feedback and he can
Sure.
go, hey, okay, what don't you like? Let's see, can't we adjust it? And sometimes he changes things that I don't initially like, and then he explains why he made the adjustment. And I go, hey, that's actually a good idea. Um, so, I obviously want him to be able to do what he does. So I just kind of, we kind of have an agreement when we're talking about brand, that I do the promotion, I do the creating, and then he does all the design and obviously as the artist and everything. So he was like, we always say, hey, stay in your lane. I'm the
Right.
art guy, you're the ideas guy. So, that, he's got so many books that he's working on right now. And I know through this process, I kept trying to get Kanan to commit to doing this book, and he was very busy, so he couldn't. He was like, "Hey, I definitely want to support you. I want you to be successful, but I just I can't really commit to this." And so I hooked up with another guy, Rob Liefeld's old anchor, Shelby Robertson. So I went on Indiegogo the first time and tried to promote this project, I think back in April, and we died. Four
Mm.
backers raised $95. So
Mm.
the campaign died after we ran a 60-day campaign, $95. Um, so people were like, "Hey man, there's a lot of comic book fans on Kickstarter." So we went on Kickstarter then, and I relaunched on Kickstarter with Shelby. Um, we were dying again. We'd raised about almost $500, and there's a guy named Dave that I think his Twitter name's Geek Out Loud. He's got a YouTube channel and stuff. But he had saw the project and he liked it, and obviously, I had already been involved in the Comicsgate movement. I've been in Comicsgate for over a year and something now. Um, and he saw the project, and he also watches Ethan Van Sciver's channel,
Sure.
and he tweeted out to Mike S. Miller, Ethan, Captain Cummings, other people that are involved within the Comicsgate community to, hey, this guy needs some help. Can you guys check his project out? And that night, Mike happened to just check his phone and he saw it, and he went on the page and he saw the art.
Yeah.
And he actually interrupted Ethan while he was talking. He was like, "Hey, I got this project that someone just tweeted at me. Could you can I show it on screen?" And he showed Brand on Ethan's channel, and then he invited me on his channel. So I went on Mike S. Miller's channel for the first time. Um, got up to about $1,500 then, um, and then we just kept going. It seemed like it was starting to fade out again, and um, I was already doing my own YouTube channel and I was creating content, and you know, uh, I hadn't gotten the attention of Ethan Van Sciver at that time. But people would like tweet at him and ask him, to have me on. And one day he actually checked the project out. I don't know what happened, because Ethan admitted even after Mike showed it on the channel, he was like, yeah, I wasn't really paying that much attention. So, he just went on with it, and I was, I was just trying to come up with different ideas to create content for my channel. Um, and I noticed when I do like comic book reviews, nobody was watching that stuff and all this. And I was bored. And so I said, hey, I was cooking anyway. I said, hey, I'm gonna make some gumbo, and I'm actually gonna film that. Yeah, so I made gumbo, and I called it Comicsgate Gumbo, and I put that up, and I put I was like Comicsgate Gumbo, watching Ethan Van Sciver live, and Ethan saw that video, and then he watched it, and he was like, hey, he seems like a nice guy, and then he watched another video that I did called Comics Gate, Not Comics Hate, because I saw that Jamal Igle and
He's my
Quanster,
favorite person on this planet,
yeah,
man.
yeah, trust me. Oh no, I'm getting a lot of mileage off Jamal Igle. I got a video called what was it, Jamal Igle, Attorney at Law. It's like I've got almost 2,000 views on it, and I love it, man. People would come in and watch that video. So it's he watched that video, the second video, and then I was, I work night shifts. So I woke up and I saw that I had gotten a message from Ethan Van Sciver on my YouTube page.
Yeah.
And it just was, it just said, I'm going to help you. And I was like, whoa, what does that mean?
That's ominous.
I was like, I'm going to help you. And I was like, that's all he said. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I went on Twitter and ding, Ethan Van Sciver started following you. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then I checked my DMs and he sent me a message. He said, hey, man, I watched the videos. I like the way you're getting down. He said, I think I'm going to help you, man. Because it was kind of crazy. I was like, wow, that would be amazing. Anything you could do, I appreciate it. And he said, I don't do business on Kickstarter. He said, why don't you shut that thing down and move it back over to Indiegogo? And he said, you can launch it live on my air. And I was like, that would be amazing. And so he had me come on, and we launched on the air, and within the first day we had raised almost $4,000.
Yeah.
So it was a little different. Then within 48 hours we were over $7,800, and obviously now we're over $47,000 now. So
yes, and pushing for 50,000 guys. So
yeah, definitely want to keep going. But I in all honesty, when we get to 50, I'm gonna try to go to 55. I'm trying to go.
Of course. Go all the way with it. Hey, let me hit a couple of these super chats real quick that came in. The privateer said Horace did nothing wrong. I mean, I don't know, buddy. Horace no longer exists, so he did something wrong. And and Darth Bobcat says, what cereal box did Jamal Igle get his degree from? And come on, you know it wasn't a box. That was bag cereal, baby.
Oh man, I love bag cereal. Oh my, that's hilarious. That is I remember when I first started seeing the little plastic bags, and I was like, oh, these must be made for people in the ghetto. Awesome.
So I gotta ask, when you make gumbo, what protein are you using in gumbo?
Well, I have a shellfish allergy because a lot of people's like, "Hey, where your shrimp at?" And I was like, "I don't know."
You can have chicken and sausage gumbo. You don't need shrimp.
That's what I did. Yeah, so I make chicken and sausage gumbo because I have shellfish allergies. So the little shrimp do not quite do it for me. But I make chicken and sausage gumbo, and it is banging.
We should have a gumbo stream sometime. I make a pretty wicked gumbo too. I mean, my humble opinion. I do the shrimp. My 11 or my almost 11-year-old loves shrimp, so we have to put shrimp in at the end. But it's typically chicken. You got sausage, of course. You got your green and red pepper. The what kind of rice do you use? Because I use a short grain sushi rice for mine, and I found that it holds moisture real well, and the longer rice for me dries out a little bit. So that's what I've been using lately. But
I use long grain. Yeah, it's like I use long grain rice, and I try to get the. I don't want to overcook the rice because that's some people try to make that kind of mush. I don't like
oh
that.
no
I
no
want
no
the
no,
rice
you
to
gotta have
be.
some texture.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you overcook the rice, it gets all mushy and everything. Although when we pour that nice glittery gravy on there, and it just glistens and makes yeah, it's good. Oh
Okay,
my
so
god.
wait a minute. So you got the rice, and then you've got the gumbo as like a soup base that you pour, or like a soup that you pour into the rice, right? That's how you
Yes,
do
yes, yes.
that, and that's a more traditional like Louisiana style.
Absolutely.
The kind I make, just because I'm lazy, I get it all together. I get it all together in the same pot, and it doesn't have the or no, you're talking gumbo. What am I talking about? I'm talking about jambalaya. I'm
Ooh, I like jambalaya though.
I'm speaking a completely different language. I mean, not
Oh,
really. We're adjacent, but
yeah, they're cousins.
my
Yeah,
brain
they're
skipped.
definitely
So
cousins.
I'm talking about jambalaya that I make because I'm up in Minnesota, but my mom's from Slidell, Louisiana. So I grew up with Cajun cooking, and you know, a big pot of sticky jambalaya is what you need in the winters up here.
Mm.
But yeah, gumbo, man. I love gumbo. Every time I'm down south, I buy gumbo at like every restaurant we go to because
Yeah,
we don't.
we got a couple places around here that sell pretty good gumbo, and but yeah, I definitely I use some hot sausage. I use some use some aldui and
Hmm.
get that stuff going, man. It is, it's delicious. I love my gumbo.
Do you put okra in your gumbo?
The base, I used to try to make take all those hours and actually make the, from scratch gumbo. But now I use the Louisiana seafood gumbo base.
Oh sure, yeah.
I, yeah, I get that on Amazon, and man, that stuff works perfectly. And it has okra in it, but it's already been dried and condensed and everything. So I just use my chicken stock, mix it with the base, and I'm telling you, it's fantastic. I've ate a lot of different gumbos from either from scratch or from the can or all this kind of different version. I'm telling you, that Louisiana seafood gumbo, that base is one of the best products I've ever bought.
Yeah,
I highly recommend.
I've used that Louisiana seafood. They have a shrimp boil and a crawfish boil,
Yeah,
and
yeah, they got all that stuff, man. We got a
yeah.
couple of stores here we got a Louisiana seafood store here, and like you can get there and you can go over there and just get like a whole big old tub of crawfish or any of that kind of stuff. They do all that stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sorry to sidetrack. I'm hungry. So hey, let's see. So you were talking about, so you got hooked up with EVS. You finally were able to get some. I mean, some people probably have a misconception of how this works, but you know, just being in the Comicsgate presence isn't what's selling these books. People are seeing your project. They're seeing the art. It's absolutely amazing. So it's a matter of just getting in front of getting the product in front of people, right? But you said that something interesting, because I'm new to all this, right? My dive into Comicsgate just kind of started with covering the initial drama between Diversity in Comics and Mark Waid back in May, when all that
Mm.
stuff went down. But you said you've been on the Comicsgate train for like a year now. Tell me about like how that worked out. What I guess what brought you to Comicsgate? Because obviously, you are not the stereotypical Comicsgate creator, because you're not an evil white Nazi.
Haha, yes.
So I mean, I don't know how you associate with these men. So that's what I want to know, is like how, I guess what brought you to Comicsgate? Did you come in as a fan? Like what did you mean by that? You've been in there for like a year, because to me it's all so new. So I'm not in on the lore.
Well, I started watching Richard C. Myers Diversity in Comics channel. That's what got me in. I started watching that probably what around what June of last year,
Sure.
and was really digging the videos that he was doing because it was speaking. He just seemed to have the ability to put into words a lot of the things that I was thinking, where they're taking characters that have been uh, straight for like 50, 60 years, and all of a sudden, Iceman's gay. This kind of thing.
Of course
Yeah,
he is.
there was like uh, Hulk is an Asian guy now. Is that kind of it's all this kind of weird stuff. They take 15-year-old Riri Williams and she's smarter than Tony Stark, and she's at MIT and she steals some parts and she builds an Iron Man suit. It's just you can't just create good characters. They have to, especially with minority characters, they have to be perfect. They can't have any faults. And I'm like, it just a lot of times that stuff gets boring. They had a little bit more success when they rolled out Miles Morales, but even with him, they're starting to insert a lot of that agenda-driven politics stuff into the book, where they kind of hinted that he was bisexual, and I was like, oh, because being in a relationship with a woman is bad, so now he's bi or bi-curious or whatever they're using. They took a character like Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, and he's bisexual. He had sex with Wolverine's son Dokken,
Well, I
and I
mean
was
that makes sense. He's the Human Torch, right?
yeah,
Flame
yeah,
on.
flame on. Yeah, I was just like, oh God, that kind of stuff like that. Um, it was Oh wait, hold on. I see somebody Green Lantern was gay before Iceman. I did not know that. At least not the. Oh man, I'm a big Green Lantern fan. That's why I was like, oh, I definitely glad I missed that. But like I said, it seems like when they create minority characters, they seem to just kind of do the little check mark and everything. Characters like what was the girl America. That book is trash. And Was it Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel? Their power seems to be more of being a minority, and it doesn't seem to have much uh, other depth to it. So, although if they're replacing someone who is not a minority, they're automatically better. I've noticed. So,
Yeah. Well, if okay, so the okay, I see what you're saying. If they're replacing someone who's not a minority, they're automatically better as a character than the other one. Like better, more virtuous. You're saying,
yeah, yeah. So like I said, perfect. Riri Williams. Of course, she can just at 15 create an Iron Man suit and be way better than Tony Stark.
right?
That's at 15. So I mean, that kind of thing. Squirrel Girl can beat Thanos. That kind of thing. So that's what they do. It seems like that's how you get over. And then obviously when the books don't sell, um,
Then it's because
they're
they're the minority character.
well, yeah, and oh, it's because these alt-right people don't want to spend their dollars on these books, as opposed to the books actually sucking. And
Right.
that's what it is. So I'm just like, hey, uh, a lot of this stuff is ridiculous. And one thing I will say about Brand is we just want to tell good stories. We don't want to insert, uh, you know, politics into the story. I might get a little flack for some religious ideologies or whatever, but even with that, I just took certain things from the Bible and I just kind of played with them. And it's not obviously a Bible book. Our characters are branded with the mark of Cain. And so the mark of Cain, was placed on Cain to protect him. He was obviously cursed, and but I kind of play that when Cain killed Abel, that he had this mark placed on him, and then he kind of went around the world finding other warriors to help him protect the earth, and
Sure.
then my characters descended from those and just went down. So it's kind of that kind of thing. So I've had people that are religious, like read the page and they'll go, "Hey, in the Bible this happened or this," and I was like, "Don't, yeah, don't go off what you read in the." I was like I literally just took like little pieces of things and I created something completely different. So it's not you won't have to read Ecclesiastes chapter 7 or whatever. It's that's
But you should. No, I'm just
yeah,
kidding.
Noah's Ark. That's kind of thing. That's like I said, I'm creating something completely from scratch. So I just took those themes and that's what I built upon. So,
Yeah, and I mean, lots of very successful properties have done similar things. You've got Supernatural, which borrows from not only various Christian and Judaic sources, but it also borrows from other mythologies as well. You've got Diablo from Blizzard borrowing on the heaven and hell imagery, but having no sort of ties to any sort of Christianity. You've got Constantine, which does similar things. I mean, it's a common but very effective way to use. And of course you've got Evangelion, big anime with lots of like Christian and Judeo adjacent themes as well. It's a great way to borrow imagery that's going to evoke certain emotions in people who are watching. It's going to be relatable enough, but to get them to maybe certain places in the story. Like you're talking about Cain being branded with the mark, but then you're flipping the script on who Cain is perceived to be by saying, well, he became this defender of the earth using the mark. And I'm guessing the mark confers that immortality that you're talking about. And now he's able to use that to build this team of people who will go on to protect the earth. So that's obviously different than Cain being the great villain of the first, or of the third chapter of the
yeah,
Bible.
it was like but we also play with some things in the New Testament. Obviously, Judas Iscariot, his betrayal of Jesus Christ. Um, the object that both the Covenant and Dark Santana are looking for is called the Judas crown. It is a crown of silver made from the 30 pieces of silver that Judas Iscariot got for betraying Jesus. So it has obviously some uh, metaphysical properties,
Right.
and the Covenant is seeking it for their own reasons, and obviously Santana is still kind of connected to Saint Nicholas, and he would like to sever himself from Saint Nicholas, and so he can be free and live his truth, as they say. Um, you know, um, so that, and obviously the hunters would like both Santana and the Covenant to not be able to get the crown.
Of course. Of course.
So we've got a lot of stories. This first story arc is 48 pages. And then we'll go into part two, and then which will take place in Las Vegas. So this first part is going to end where they're about to head to Vegas, and then we'll pick up when we do the next crowdfunder. We'll pick up where they're headed to Vegas to have a little honeymoon hijinks, and then after that, we go into a story that is more focused on my villain Dark Santana, called Eight Crazy Nights, which will take place maybe about a year into the Cravens' marriage. It's going to be their first Christmas together as a family, and David is going to be kind of explaining to Dawn, his wife, why he kind of gets a little sad around the holidays, and he'll explain how he first encountered Santana, and just kind of get into some of that stuff. Um, and then once we wrap that story up, we'll go into uh, the next story, which is called The Judas Crown. So we'll set some of that stuff up in Eight Crazy Nights. And then Kanan and I will go into The Judas Crown, and we'll develop that more. I've been very transparent about the fact that in brand, there are going to be at least a couple of kids. So by the end of the first story, Dawn will have had her son William Craven with David, and then we'll go by the time we go into the third part of my story that I call Revelations, she'll have had Rose Craven. Uh,
Sure.
yeah, so uh, I've got a bunch of stories involving the kids. So like we just kind of I want to get through these stories so I can have the kids, and then so I can kind of grow them up a little bit, and then we can start having fun with the children and stuff. So
Absolutely. So let me hit a couple of these chats real quick, and then we'll start talking about what the story with that cover is, and I'll bring it
oh
back up on screen in a second. So Tillip says, "What's Antonio's favorite Death Grips track? Do you listen to
I
Death Grips?"
I actually do not, but now I will say this. I used to live with a couple of guys in this metal band called the Tony Danza Tap Dance Extravaganza. You can YouTube those guys. If no, it's seriously, it's hard like grindcore. I used to live with those guys, and I lived with them for about 3.5 years. My roommates Brad and Butler, um, and they would have some of their friends that would be on tour come through and stay. So I met a lot of bands. It was like I met, let's say I met like Guar. I met,
Nice.
yeah, I met Guar. I met a band called the Red Chord. I met a band called See You Next Tuesday. I went
Solid
to a
band.
lot, man. I went to a lot of, metal shows. I met a band called 12 Tribes. um it was I like I said, I met a lot of metalheads. And yeah, like I said, I met the Red Chord, and I'd seen them on Headbangers Ball. So those guys. What was there's a band called Pig Destroyer, and I ended up talking to some of those guys. Like I said, it was definitely an experience living with some musicians that would travel all over the country, and never have their rent money on time for
Of
whatever
course,
reason.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you could have just stopped at never have their rent money. I mean, where they got it was always a mystery, I bet.
Yeah, trust me. It's like they would go. It's like, hey, we're gonna be gone for 3 weeks, and they'll come back and they'd have like $300 in their pocket. I was just like, dude, you've been out on the road for a month, and you come back and you don't have any money. It was fun though.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Mm.
So I have to address something. There's a lot of calls for Fireball in the chat tonight, and guys, I have to tell you, tonight I'm drinking Milo's famous sweet tea.
Ooh, I like
This
Mellow.
this is not sponsored by Milo's, although it should be. But you guys have to know that I was so thoroughly castigated by being repeatedly called an alcoholic that I have joined AA, and I am now 3 days sober.
Mm, mm,
because
all right.
because one of my former guests so thoroughly won a debate against Vox Day that he obliterated Vox Day so hard that it knocked me into Mormon sobriety, we'll call it.
Mm,
No, guys, I'm not drinking tonight because it's I started out this channel drinking in every video because I was doing usually 1 to 3 videos a week tops, except for really busy weeks. And then now I do a video almost every day, and that's just way too much liquor. so,
mm.
so today is a night off of drinking, but I do appreciate it. There will be a liquor stream probably tomorrow night. If you want to engage in that, we may be. I've got to talk to Sriracha, but we may be doing the next chapter of the Russell Greer book. And if you guys from the comics community are not familiar with the greatest legal mind of our generation, Russell Greer, and his obsession with Taylor Swift, you need to come check that out. But so next we've got Jesse N saying, "What's up, Antonio?"
What's going on? How?
We've got Ryan English. He asks opinions on manga versus comics.
Well, I love manga. And just like I always talk about, I love manga. I love Japanese anime. A lot of that stuff when I was a kid, it inspired me, and that's where the masks come from in brand. I like I used to watch a show called Ronin Warriors, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it's in
Yes.
Japan. It's called like Super Samurai Troopers. I
Powers
think
in the
it is.
armor, man. The
Yeah,
powers
yeah,
in
and
the
it's like,
armor.
yeah, Tao Chi, you know, Iron Rock Crusher. You know, it's like I would love that show. So I wanted the character David to be able to power up. So he's got his mass penance with him, and then he can fight. They can fight separately, and then he's like when they get into a little trouble, they need to merge up. So penance will hook up with him, and then he'll power up. We have, and everybody keeps asking to see like the joined penance and David together. It's like Kanan is working on that, but we have not shown that yet. Because like I said, the campaign is still running. So as we're going, we want to trickle little snippets. Like if you've been watching Kanan's YouTube channel, The Art of Kanan White, he has been definitely doing a lot of character designs because he asked for a list. He was like, okay, man, give me all the stuff that I need to create before we really start getting into the pages. We got so many characters that have to be created.
Right.
So I had a list of characters. I'm like, create these characters. Kind of give him some basic feedback. I know the other day he created one of our characters that is the handler of the hunters, a guy named Antonio Vargas, who is a mortal priest that helps coordinate and send the hunters on their missions, and when they collect like cursed objects, um, he catalogs and locks them away in the vault, and which I kind of stole that. There was a TV show called Friday the 13th that I used to watch when I was younger, and they were running an antique shop called Curious Goods, and I love the idea of those guys just going out on adventures, collecting cursed objects and stuff. And so I obviously sampled that and put that in brand because I want them to be able to go after people hunting, witches, people that are, using mystical objects for nefarious purposes. But they're also going to be like, say, a fallen angel that doesn't want to have to return to heaven. He would have like a cursed object that would help prolong his time on the earth, or a demon for that matter.
Sure.
So yeah.
All right. So Jesse N says, "Hey Antonio, just back brand.
Sweet.
Good work, buddy. Good work. Thank you for doing that." Xenophagia says, "I played a show with Tony Danza. That's cool. You lived with them. The book looks great. I'll be back."
Let me explain to you that living with these guys was those were some filthy animals. I love those guys, but they were very messy. and, it was crazy. It was, and then there was always a house full of guys. Because like I said, it would be all these bands traveling through. I live here in Murfreesboro, right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and there would always
Ooh.
be these bands coming through, and they'd be like, hey, Brad, we need a place to stay for a couple of days. Is that cool if we come through? We'll play a show, and obviously you guys can come in and it'd be like that kind of deal. So they'd be like, hey guys, there's another band coming through. So I was like, it was kind of hard to have the place to myself sometimes. I'd be like, God, man, I was literally, like I wake up in the middle of the night, need to go to the bathroom, there'd be guys sleeping in the hall and just different. I was just like, man, go down, try to wash my clothes in the laundry room, and there was guys bunked up in our laundry room down there.
There's a dude in the dryer.
No, seriously. One time we gave we gave storage. We gave shelter to 3 different bands one time. So yeah, we had like 18 people in a little 3-bedroom house.
It
it
was
was
cozy. It was cozy.
definitely yeah. And hey, Marsupial Gamer, you're from Franklin. That is where Doug TeNapel lives. So Earthworm Jim creator Doug TeNapel is from Franklin as well. So or he's not from there, but he lives there now. So
So
and so
I'm gonna ask you, since you're near Nashville, ever
mm,
been to this place? I don't. There you go, Peg Leg Porker, down there in Nashville.
I have not. I have not been there. I've been to Nashville. I lived in Nashville for 3 years actually. I was going to school there, and but there's a place called Smoking Thighs up in Nashville that is
Ooh.
fantastic. They do all this like I think chicken and ribs and different. Oh man, it's like I see you, brother. All right,
uh,
but
yeah,
yeah.
Peg Leg Porker does almost entirely pork. They do chicken as well. I was down through Nashville earlier this year. We made a pit stop. We took the family down to Florida, and we stopped in Nashville overnight. And I just looked up the closest barbecue place,
Mm.
and it was Peg Leg Porker. Turns out they have their own bourbon, which is fantastic if you like bourbon. But their food was delicious too, and the line was out the door at like 10 o'clock at night. It was a disaster, but it was great. Great food. So if you ever head in, I'd recommend it. I don't know anything about the layout of Nashville, but it kind of looked like an uptowny type area. Bunch of people walking around, and all the parking was expensive. So
Oh yeah, it seems like they're trying to convert into Yuppieville in Nashville now. So
yeah,
um,
yeah.
they've got the little suburb areas and stuff, and but definitely let me see. Oh, okay. Where did I go to school?
Oh, one more thing, real quick. The privateer says, "Stop lawyer stuff and drink whiskey / do YouTube," and I pretty much am, buddy. So, I'm maintaining a small part of my practice, but I'm really scaling it back and focusing on this because I like the ability to educate and entertain people more than I like doing a lot of paperwork. So, sorry, I didn't mean to step over you. I just that was the last one. I wanted to get it out of the way. So now go back to what you were doing.
Oh yeah, I was someone in the chat just Marsupio just asked where I went to school, and uh, I went to in Nashville. I went to a school called Tennessee Preparatory School. That's where I graduated high school, and now I did not go into college after that. I just went right into I started working. I started working at Hardee's. That's why I got out of school. I was working at Hardee's, and got into management there, and just then I went from there. I went to working at Exxon, and then I started working at a check cashing place and started doing like Western Union transfers and stuff like that. But like, yeah, I went to the school of hard knocks after that. Yeah,
Checks
so
cashed, cash now.
but yeah, well, I'm gonna tell you something though. You learn a lot from working at a place that handles wire transfers, because we start seeing that we would have a lot of illegal immigrants that would come in and they would send money back to their families and stuff.
Oh yeah,
And so that was a thing, and we would have to be kind of careful about how we wired money to places. Um, and it I'd see people, the same guy would come back with like two or three different names, and yeah, it'd be that kind of thing, because obviously I'm sure you're familiar that there's only so much you can send per day and stuff, and if you go over
yeah.
that amount, then we have to flag it.
Right,
And so
you got the $10,000 required reporting,
yeah,
and then you got your $3,000 suspicious activity, which was up to the discretion of the banker. I worked in banking and finance for 6 years before becoming a lawyer, so
yeah,
I'm
I
with
had
it.
to I had to fill out a lot of paperwork and call Western Union and stuff like that. But I mean, I did that. I did that for a couple years, man. Doing wire transfers, people wiring their truck payments and different things. So, and cash and income tax. That was the worst time of the year to be working at the check cash places when income tax season would come, because
Yeah,
they wouldn't. A lot of people, and the thing is, when they build a lot of these check cashing places, they don't build them in the good part of town. They always build them in areas where, impoverished areas, because a lot of times poor people don't believe in having banks. They
right.
don't believe in having a bank account. And I would talk to some of these people. A lot of people that would come cash checks, they would they would be working day labor here, so they would get paid every day at the end of the shift. So they would get their little check for like $45, and they would come in. And I was like, dude, why don't you just open up a bank account, man? This is
Right.
It was like, I would always try to tell people that, and I'm like, obviously we were getting a little slice because we get like $2 or $3 out of every check that these guys are cashing. So I'm sitting there going, dude, if you just work at McDonald's, you can make, hey man, I'm not working at McDonald's. That's not for me, man. And they'd rather go out, and I was like, but I also noticed that when these people would cash the checks, they would immediately go and buy like a 40 ounce or whatever. It's like, hey, let me get a pack of smokes and a 40
And a
and
couple lotto tickets.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. We sold lottery tickets. We sold everything that would help inhibit your vices. All the little things like that. We would have. Yeah, we had like little blunts so that you could roll your weed. We had the cigarettes. We had all kind of like malt liquor. So anything that would help
Would bring
perpetuate
them back.
absurdity.
Bring them back next week.
Like I said, some of these guys I saw 3 or 4 days a week because, like I said, they were working day labor, so they were literally getting paid every day.
Yep.
So it's like, oh, $45. Boom, here you go, buddy. And then they would bring it and cash it. I was like, dude, save some of them checks up and go start you a bank account, man. I don't believe in banks, man. I don't trust banks. They take they take the money. And I was like, dude,
I'm
I
taking your
try to
money right now.
yeah, exactly. And I was just like, man, and my boss got mad at me. He's like, hey, quit telling these people to go to a bank, man. What are you doing? I was like, I feel like we're taking advantage of people. I do. I felt bad because I was like, man, they don't realize that it just perpetuates the cycle. It just keeps going on and on and on, and they're never going to get out of that. They're never going to get out of that rut. A lot of those people were living in hotels. They were like living in these little rundown motels that were around it. Like they were ratty motels, and we'd get people to our place was right off the interstate, so a lot of times we get a lot of people from out of town, and they'd be like, hey, where's a good hotel at? I said, okay, well, if you don't smoke crack, you need to go about 3 blocks over.
If you do smoke crack, it's right there. It's a short stumble away.
Yeah, it's about a half a block down the road there if you smoke crack and check in there at the Ramada there. That it's like that kind of thing. And there's a place called the Jackson Motel here in town. It was like there's a lot of like drug activity going on there. So I'd be like, that is not a good situation. So like I said, always trying to give the helpful advice. When you work in places like that, you end up having to give a lot of directions and stuff like that. So.
Sure. Okay, well, I got one super chat here from Bagel Goose. He says the real question is, what is Antonio's fursona?
Fursona.
Oh yeah,
is that about that furry thing you did the other
day?
Yeah. Oh God, I was like, I heard you talking about that, and I was like, okay, that's yeah. I guess I shouldn't judge. I have on my channel, I have a podcast that I do with Miss Sashi called Sexy Party, and me and her do that. Now we had Doug TeNapel on last week. I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do for this particular week's episode, which I think is going to be tentatively titled "Fat Sex." So that is the title that has been popping up in my head. So me and Sashi will team up and do devilish things again on Sexy Party. So
well, that sounds either terrific or terrifying. I'm not sure. Well, let's speaking of fat sex, actually not really at all, but let's I'm going to bring this back to the top. So here's the cover. Let's talk about what happened with this, because I mean, you've been working on this book. You've put 20 years into this thing, off and on, but you put 20 years. Elizabeth Bishop gets 12 years credit for 12 years for writing one stupid poem, which she wasn't writing that poem for 12 straight years. She was working on it on and off too. You get 20 years credit for working on this book. So talk to me about what happened with this cover. This is the reason that we're the tangential reason, my excuse to talk to an interesting dude, is this cover. So tell me what happened here.
Okay, well, obviously we had this piece created to mock the Joelle Jones Chelsea Kane Mockingbird 8 cover, and where she had Mockingbird asking about her feminist agenda. And so I decided, I said, what if I have Dark Santana in that same shirt, and I want his fat gut laying out and doing all this,
Yeah.
I just kind of I wanted to poke fun at that cover. So there's an artist named Jamie Biggs that I reached out to, and like I say, he done a couple pieces for me, and I gave him the idea for this, and he thought it was funny. So he said, "Yeah, man." So I paid him, and he obviously got to work. And then I hired a colorist and blew that thing up. And we started selling T-shirts with that on it, which, like I said, is on Amazon. It's on TeePublic if you want that. So we started selling T-shirts, and but obviously I was building up to actually launching brand and putting everything together. Uh, when we relaunched the first two times we launched, it was with Shelby, and then the third time, uh, I had gotten to talk to Kanan again, and he decided that he wanted to come back and actually commit to doing the project if we could work some things out, and which we did. And then so Kanan was back on the project, so we obviously relaunched on Ethan's channel. Um, when that happened, there was a client of Kanan. Kanan's doing work for this guy, and he saw the work and he saw the money we were raising, and he asked Kanan. He said, "Hey, I really want to know how you guys raised all that money. What do I need to do? I'm obviously you're doing work for my book too. How do we, get to that type of success that you guys are enjoying?" And Kanan's like, "Hey, I'm the art guy. Antonio's the ideas guy. Talk to Antonio." And he's like, "Well, Antonio, talk to me." He said, "Well, let me ask him." So Kanan came to me. He said, "Hey, this guy that he's one of my clients. He wants to have some information about the Indiegogo and stuff like that." And I said, "Yeah, sure." And he sent me a message, and I, gave him, some advice, and I didn't think nothing else of it. So I streamed with Ethan 2 days ago,
Hmm.
and Ethan was like, "Hey, I'm gonna come back later tonight, and I'm gonna do a late night stream." So I was like, "Oh, I better get some sleep because so I can get up and be on Ethan's stream later on." That night. So right before I went to bed, this guy started messaging me. I hadn't talked to him in a couple weeks, and he goes, "Hey, who did that? Ask me about my feminist agenda piece." And I said, "That was done by Jamie Biggs." And he was like, "Oh, okay. How do I reach Jamie Biggs?" And I was like, "Well, he doesn't have any social media. I found him on eBay, so you need to go on eBay." And he
You
was
can
like, "Well,
buy people on eBay?
you can buy." Oh no, Jamie's got a nice little business going on eBay. He's done like about 700 transactions just selling different art and
Oh,
sketch covers
nice.
and stuff. He works
Nice.
at yeah. He's doing okay on there, and that's how I found him. And he's like a serious Todd McFarlane clone. If you're familiar with Todd McFarlane's style, that's what a lot of people saw that and they thought it was like, man, somebody ghosted Todd McFarlane, because I'm serious. He does a lot of he puts a lot of like 11 by 17 art up that is like Spider-Man versus Venom, and it looks like Todd McFarlane. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like,
I'm a
it,
little familiar with Todd.
Todd definitely, yeah. I mean, this dude literally looked like he just ripped Todd's style off. It's so uh I told him, I said, "Hey," and he kept asking me all these questions. And I said, so I sent him a DM. I was like, "Hey man, if you want to hire Jamie," I gave him the email address, his business address, and I just said, "Hey, just send him a message." Oh yeah, I got that as well. I got all those image books from back in the day. And, so I gave him Jamie's info to reach out to him. I was like, "Hey, hire him." And it was, so I went to, he said, "Hey, thanks, man." I went to sleep. And that's when I didn't know. When I went to sleep, all hell broke loose.
So
He decided, yeah, he decided to he saw the, asked me about my feminist agenda piece, and he decided, "Hey, I'm going to tweet this to Brett Booth, who has been very, very vocal that he wants absolutely nothing to do with Comicsgate projects." Everybody keeps saying, "Hey, Brett, come to Comicsgate." And he keeps saying, "I don't want to be associated with you guys. You guys are a hate group," all this kind of thing. And just to sweeten the pot a little bit, he also tweeted the same image to Chelsea Kane, who has repeatedly said that Comicsgate has harassed her because of the Mockingbird 8 cover. And so I reached out to him and I was like, why the hell did you do that? Because all of a sudden everybody was tweeting at me and everybody was starting talking about, I started seeing rape and threatening violence against. I was like, whoa, what are you talking about? I'm not trying to say that women should be harmed. What are you doing? And like I said, Brett Booth has almost 22,000 people following him on Twitter. So when he says something like that, it gets people, it gets attention. And people were just, it was weird going to the thread and people were talking about me like I was a dead person or something. It was like, hey, this guy's obviously a violent person and he wants women harmed, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're perpetuating rape against women. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's not true. What are you doing? And I was just like more and more people. And so and then I saw Brett was saying stuff and Brett's wife was saying stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm not, I just was mocking the cat. He's like, well, you're obviously making a political statement. I thought you Comicsgate people were against politics. And I was like, I'm not making a political statement. I just thought that cover sucked balls, so I made fun of it. And he, yeah, well, that's what I tweeted that to him. I was like, I said, I'm against agenda-driven politics being inserted in the comic books, and he was like, well, the original cover was political. So you mocking it is also a political statement. And I was like, I stand by the previous statement that I made. That the cover itself was not meant to be political. I was just making a statement because there's so many people that have parodied that cover. You can Google it on, it's like you can see all the different people that have made fun of that shirt. So I'm not the only one. And it's just I just couldn't believe that he was saying that. And then like I said, after that he just stopped talking to me because I've noticed a lot of these people that are on the left, these uber liberals, when they start talking about Comicsgate and then people go, hey, well you should talk to Antonio Brice. He's a black conservative and he's in Comicsgate. Then they get real quiet and they go back to talking to the white guys because I don't fit the narrative.
Right.
So it's like or there's like you guys are against LGBTQ people, and then like we'll have gay people within our community say, "Hey, I'm gay and I'm in Comicsgate. What are you talking about?" Boop. They just don't want to talk to those people. So it's that's crazy, man. And I'm sitting there going, "What are you guys talking about, man?" It's like you guys want to talk, but you don't want to listen. And so Brett stopped talking to me. But then some of the other supporters kept going, hey man, Brett, why are you saying this? This is not true. He's like, well, I think it's insinuating violence against women and all this kind of. I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Now I was like, they was like, but he's got other covers on the page. And there's another one with Dark Santana with Dawn Craven and Horace, and the whole shot when you go down, there's blood on her, because he's like a little clawing at her stomach a little bit because he's captured her and stuff.
Right.
And Kanan drew that one is sinister. I mean, that one really looks. And he was like, and they were like, well, he's got other covers there. And Brett was like, well, I saw the other one. There's a different tone to this one. I think he's threatening violence against women. And and so I tweeted the other cover that Kanan did, and I was like, so is this one threatening violence against women as well? And I was like, that's a rather broad stroke for even for such talented hands, And again, he doesn't want to talk to me anymore, but he keeps talking about me. So it was weird.
Here,
To
I
see
got
that.
it up on. I pulled up the cover with the claws and the belly thing going. It's another just fantastic piece.
No,
Piece of
Kanan is
art.
dope. Kanan is a brilliant artist. I mean, it's like I love his stuff, and it's I couldn't believe because like I said, if you want to talk about what I'm doing and not just talk at me or talk about me, I'm engaging you directly. You were talking about what I'm doing, and I couldn't believe because I have to be honest, I got a little upset with Kanan because I said that asshole that you told me to talk to has gotten all this trouble started because like I said, everybody was talking about me and saying that I'm promoting like rape culture and all this kind of nonsense. I was like, whoa, I was like, what is this? And Kanan was like, oh man, and the guy reached back out. He was like, "What are you doing, man? Why are you doing all this?" He's like, "I thought the art was cool. I was just trying to help." And I was just, he was just like doing all this. That's and that's a good question. It's like why did he tweet those things to Brett Booth in the first place? And when I asked him why he did that because I also said, dude, you tweeted out to Chelsea Kane too. Why are you doing that if you claiming you're trying to help? You claiming you're supporting what we're doing, and then you're trying to contact people or tweet at people who have been very, very opposed to Comicsgate. And as I said, Chelsea Kane has repeatedly said that she feels Comicsgate is a hate movement. They've harassed her because of the Mockingbird 8 cover. And I'm like, you're tweeting this to her? She must have been busy that day. Thank God she just ignored it. But Brett obviously didn't ignore it. And then, like I said, when he started talking about threatening violence towards women, and like I said, I saw some of the comments. His wife's, who's a colorist, she talked about certain things on the cover as well. And I was like, wow, man, you guys are kind of going. I was literally just doing a parody cover, and you guys have kind of made it a thing. And then obviously it got picked up by Bounding into Comics. They saw what had happened. So Bounding into Comics, who had interviewed me and Kanan a few weeks ago, they saw it, and they wrote a story on it, and then it just got bigger, So people the next day they kept asking Brett about it. They were like, "Hey, why are you doing this? What do you do?" And he kept, he doubled down on it. He's standing with his opinion. I'm standing with mine. Uh, and then like I saw other people were making videos. Like I saw an Umbrella Guy. He did a video, and it's got like about 6,000 views on it already about it. And I was like, man, the video I did, the first one is over almost 2,000 views itself. So it's just I don't know. I think people seem to try to say that you can't show bad guys doing what bad guys do, even though that's the whole point.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Well, part of my gig, right? I'm a lawyer. I discuss legal topics, and then on these interviews, we like to ask the hard hitting questions. So I do have a challenging question for you today, sir, and that is, why haven't you stopped abusing women?
Yeah, that's not much of a challenge to me because I know that I am a true son of the South, and my mother raised me to treat women with dignity and respect. So I can honestly say that I'm old school, uh, so I definitely will deflect on that question.
So we've got a couple chats here. Clay Early says, "Your art is dope AF. I'm subbing. Keep killing it."
Oh, sweet.
Clay is my moderator in the chat here, and he's a good friend of mine. He's a good dude, and he is a closet English nerd. So don't ever let his drunken demeanor fool you, because Clay is an extremely smart guy, and I think people are often disarmed by his attitude. But that's high praise in my opinion. Cormoran says, "Why do you think, or why do they think it's bad to show villains like Santana, Apocalypse, Joker doing this, but it's okay to show a hero like Captain Marvel bashing a sweet old woman?" Any opinions on that?
Ah, but that's what I'm saying. It is they yeah, I don't know the idiotic SJW nonsense that comes out of Hollywood. It really you can see it in the books now. That's and one thing that I said to Brett is that I just want the soy taken out of my comics. That's what I want. I just want regular comics.
Listen, guys, I'm a big fan of Asian food, but soy sauce, not even once.
Well, I put a little soy
No,
on
no,
the.
no. Redact. Run away from that statement, sir.
So it's like, yeah, I just want the soy taken out of my comics. That's all I want. I just want normal books. I want a
Yeah,
Spider-Man
because
comic
comics are
without.
where we get the buff, the biggest, buffest, like most hyperbolically, how do what do we do? Like archetypal, archetype creating, not archetype mimicking, archetype creating characters. The characters where you take one focus, like Captain America. I mean, he is patriotism on every stimulant you can find, and you want him going out and just dominating in whatever way America needs it to do, right? That's why you read a comic book with Captain America in it. If you pick up Batman, you want him solving problems in the way that you would solve problems if you were rich enough to make the consequences go away, right? Like you could add protection to yourself. You can have all the coolest tools and gadgets. You can be smarter than everybody else. And you can actually do something good that the law that society can't fix, but you can because you've got this pool of resources and you've got the knowledge and intuition to do it. And Batman is that to the max, right? He is that problem solving self where we say, you know what, if I just had enough, I could go after this and do it. Like that's what comic books are. And I feel like and I'm a literature major, although that doesn't really mean anything. My undergraduate degree was in literature and creative writing, but when I look at stories, like there are places for subtlety and nuance, but then you've got comics, and it seems like what they're trying to do. What I was gonna say was wrong. Let me change the track. What they think they need to do, they think this is my opinion, is that they think they need to insert the same level of nuance that you'd get from like a Toni Morrison book that no one's going to buy into a comic book to make it quote unquote legitimate. And what they're failing to realize is that it's a legitimate medium without needing the high grade literature seal of approval, right? Like the best part about having a literature degree is going to school with all of these professors who can't publish and sell books to save their lives, telling you what's important about literature, right? Like it's my favorite part. They're like, "No, this is the good stuff. Don't read Stephen King or Clive Barker. I mean, they sell millions of books. Don't read those because they're not proper literature, right? Because that's genre fiction. That's wrong." I think we've got a bunch of people coming out of schools trying to get into comics to make them legitimate, and again overlooking the fact that comics don't need help to be legitimate. They are legitimate art form on their own, and they serve a very important purpose, and people like them. That's what I'm getting out of this. I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but man, that's how I see it.
Well, see, here's the thing. We've kind of obviously, if you looked over the last, say, I'd say 24 months, comics are dropping more and more. Like we'll sell less comics this year than we sold the previous year, and then less than the year before. Um, and it's because a lot of this stuff changed when Donald Trump got elected. Now you're looking at Captain America, and he's fighting people wearing "Make America Great Again" hats. I saw they inserted that in a issue a while back. The bad guys have to be "Make America Great Again" people.
Right.
Um, um, uh, a comic book like Batman, they first they fleece the fans by promising a wedding and hype the hell out of it, and have 50 variant covers so that they can spike up this collector's market. Then it leaks out that, hey, there's actually not going to be a wedding in this issue. So you're buying this stuff, and it's really not going to improve in value because everybody now knows it was just a scam. So um, that kind of stuff. And then they go, well, Batman's actually an atheist. He doesn't, it's like this kind of thing. This is the stuff that's starting to get inserted into these books now. Like I mentioned before, making Miles Morales bi-curious. This kind of thing. It's like, hey, Spider-Man's trans now. It's like the new Supergirl TV show this season is coming up. They changed one of the Legion of Superhero characters, and they hired a trans actor. So they're like, hey, we're going to make a trans superhero now. The character was originally a woman, and now they're making it a trans woman. So it's they're
And
inserting these things.
And isn't that like what's funny is aren't they overlooking like that the X-Men are like they're telling the trans story, right? Like that's the whole thing. Like I mean, come on. So to be an X-Man, you've got this mutant gene, which is not meant to be offensive in this analogy. Get over it. You've got this mutant gene that's kind of latent through the early parts of the childhood, but then eventually around the teenage time, there's some event, and they realize that this entire time their identity has been something more and different than what they've been experiencing and projecting to the world, and then they have to deal with that transition. They have to be they're ostracized from society. They have to deal with fitting into a new crowd and a new role in life. Like, isn't that's the trans story told long before there was a trans agenda? Without and it was told in such a way to allow people to empathize with the whole idea of being placed into an out group. I mean, it wasn't necessarily the trans story, but it's adaptable to the trans story. It's adaptable to the gay story. It's adaptable to any time someone undergoes something in their life where they have a crisis of identity and they have to reinvent themselves into something that might be unpopular in the rest of the world. Like we already have this story. You don't need to have a trans X-Man, because you can, sure, but you don't need to force that in. It's built into the idea of comics. It's almost like comics have been telling these types of stories in their own way for a very long time. It drives me nuts. It drives me nuts, the need to ham fist this stuff, because it's already there. But that's me. Sorry.
Yeah, there's not enough black people in the X-Men. Let's do that. You know, it's just and my thing is, you know, we you know, I grew up with obviously Storm being a prominent member of the X-Men, and when I was really young, you used to see characters like Luke Cage, and he'd be like, "You jive, sucker!" No, you know, it would be that kind of thing.
Yes.
You know, it would be like that. And even the original version of Blade, he had like a big afro, and you know, Blade wasn't a vampire or half vampire at that point. He was just a human whose mother had gotten bitten by a vampire while she was pregnant with him, so he had immunity to vampire bites. You know, but he had been trained to, you die, sucker, go out here and fight people. You know, and that's the problem of the old comic book characters outside of say a Black Panther T'Challa, where they would talk and it would be this kind of weird black exploitation type speech, and you know, a lot of times comic book companies would create black characters, but that would be their power. Presenting Black Hercules.
Yeah.
You know, that it would be that kind of thing. You know, it's like, so he's just as strong as the white guy, but he's black. You know, it was just like that. That's
He's
what it would be.
funnier.
Yeah. It's like, so. Um, a lot of people don't remember, but like Black Lightning, when that first came out, you know, it was just like, why is he Black Lightning? You know, like, you know, it's just he's just his power. He's like, but we have to emphasize the fact that he's black, so he's Black Lightning. You know,
Sure.
it was just like, I used to watch Super Friends with him. It was like they had all the, you know, ethnic characters. Apache Chief. You know, like, you know, they had the samurai, and yeah, it was like, yeah, they had like literally every ethnic state on the rainbow. You know, it's like, hey, you know, but I actually liked Apache Chief. He neck chalk, and he would grow up. You know,
Yeah.
like, I
Hey,
used
did
to
you
love.
sidebar, did you see that episode of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, when Apache Chief spilled coffee on his lap and he couldn't grow? God, that was
Oh
so
man.
funny.
Yeah, I used to love Harvey Bird. I pretty much anything on Adult Swim. I used to like I dig Adult Swim. I used to watch Boondocks on there, and just like, oh man, it's just, that was some great you know, that would be you know, I just really enjoyed that, and obviously like Rick and Morty and stuff like that. So you know, so yeah, it was Black Vulcan on Super Friends, but the character Black Lightning was in the comic books though. So, you know,
So, hey, we got another super chat from Tillip. He says, of course, Batman is an atheist. His coworkers are literally aliens, demons, robots, and time travelers.
Mm, there you go. There you go. So I was just, I like I said, I just, you can clearly see that they are uh, people in Hollywood that are inserting certain things in because it's like, oh, we have to make sure everyone is included. So I had saw a story on the Daily Wire where they had talked about there's a children's show and they have a trans puppet on there, and it's like, hi, I'm Timmy, and you can follow me on my trans journey. And yeah, it was that kind of thing. And Joe Rogan had he had a doctor on about I think about 2 months ago. She used to write for Playboy.com and stuff like. I can't remember her name. She's really smart though, and gorgeous as all get out as well. But she was really smart, and she was talking about uh, you know some people are claiming to be trans just because their friends are trans. It was like I'm sure she's gotten some flack for that, but she was really talking about like if I'm 5 or 6 years old, why are you talking about being trans at that age? You need to grow into some of that. It's like as you get older and you can make a more informed decision if you are trans. I'm just saying, but oh, I'm 5 and I'm trans. It's like that kind of it's weird. So hey, Timmy, let me follow you on your trans journey. And I'm like, you guys are clearly trying to insert this stuff from a young age and kind of indoctrinate people. I know I talked about that with Doug TeNapel when he was on Archery, because Doug is obviously very devout and very open and honest about his faith,
Yep.
and and he talks about that they're clearly I know he used to write for Breitbart and stuff like that, so he's been very uh, open about what he thinks that because they were talking about turning Elsa from Frozen in the sequel to make her part of the LGBT community, like
Right.
give her a partner. And I'm like, oh God, okay, what are you guys doing, man? These are cartoons. When I used to watch cartoons, they were just cartoons. Now you're trying to teach life lessons in these things, and I
And
don't,
and
go
life
ahead.
lessons that no one's that the audience isn't ready for. Like we've got this problem with the LGBTQ agenda, whatever. Like it's a boogeyman, but there's some legitimacy to the boogeyman, right? Because there is some sort of agenda. It's not necessarily a coordinated effort. Maybe it's just a massive presence in the social zeitgeist. However you want to look at it, but you've got this thing that you're talking about, like where we're talking about kids, 6 and 7 years old, being identified as trans, and we've got all these different things coming together. One, we've got this weird view about gender roles where we say that the genders don't matter, but then we focus on how much difference there is between gender as long as it's like denigrating to men and venerating to women. We have to have gender specific rules, but the genders aren't any better than the other except one kind of is, we decide. But
Oh
then
yeah.
so then you've got this weird gender role thing going on. And then we've got the trans community, or not trans community, but like these trans advocates saying that if you identify with a particular gender, uh, because we really suddenly care about like what a gender identity is. If you identify with this gender, then that means biologically you need to change your body, and all of this stuff is happening when kids are struggling to figure out their identity outside of all of that, right? Like as you're getting into school, you're starting to meet people, you're starting to try and navigate through social groups. You've got kids who are being bullied, you've got kids who are popular, you've got kids who go from popular to being bullied if they move to a different school or something like that. They're going through all these identity crises, and here we are saying, well, maybe it's because you're actually a boy instead of a girl, or maybe it's because you're actually a girl instead of a boy. And like we're basing this all on these gender constructs, as they call them, but then saying that genders, like it's got to be inherent. If genders inherent because that would be how you transition, right? Like, so we've got this weird like conflicting soup of ideas, and we're throwing it at kids when they can't figure out why their hairstyle isn't okay, or if they should wear baggy pants or like leggings, right? Like it's the wildest thing to
Mm-hmm.
me. I don't get it. I don't get why we do this to kids. It's like, and it shouldn't be in media. It really shouldn't be in media, because there I'm willing to concede that there's a percentage of people who have legitimate gender dysmorphia, and maybe the surgery is the proper thing to do. I'm willing to concede that, at least for now. I don't know enough about it to say, well, it's definitely not that. So I'll concede that. But I think what you're talking about with the doctor who's writing for Playboy is that in the wave to find this tiny minority of people and offer them support, we're dragging other people who have just some sort of various identity crises going on. We're catching them with the net that we're casting, right? And so now we're
Yeah.
bringing in kids, and we're at real risk of doing lasting damage to them, and causing long-term problems based on a misdiagnosis, we'll say. And again, this is all my opinion. I could be completely wrong on this, but I don't think so. It doesn't make sense what we're doing right now. There's something just inside that rankles me about this whole thing. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, like I said, you can kind of see um how they're doing these things like that, and you know, just because someone like myself is vocal about, hey, maybe we should just focus on telling good stories, or not, kind of leave this other stuff out of it and just get back to, especially on children's programming. I know if I will, as a parent, I would not want my child being exposed to some of that stuff that they're starting to add, like on shows like Sesame Street and different, there's millions and millions of kids that watch Sesame Street. It's like, hey, let's put this in here. I just, if the programming is not, just straight up and down quality children's programming, and it's not trying to, beat me over the head with something. I feel like as a parent, I would have the right to, teach my child about that when the time is right. If the child comes to me and asks me a question, about gay couples or something like that, then we would sit down and have that type of conversation. But now they're like, oh, let's try to teach people about trans when they're 4. It's like, I just want my, oh yeah, the Bert and Ernie thing. I saw, man, they were on Frank Oz on that, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I love Frank. I did a video on it on my channel, and I love that Frank Oz was a boss. Jedi Master Yoda himself was like, hey, I created Ernie and or Bert, which he created one. I think it was Bert. But he was like, he's not gay. They were like, no, he's gay. He was
it's
like,
like, no, it's
why
a
are you
puppet, buddy.
yeah, why are you he was like, why are you taking this away from so many of your gay fans that grew up watching Bert and Ernie? He was like, because I created the character, and I didn't create him as a gay character. He's gay. And I was just like, that kind of stuff. And like I said, everybody was coming at him. There was so many people just tweeting at him and going. And like I said, he didn't run from it. I appreciate the fact that he stood tall like a boss, and handle his business. I was like, because my mom used to always say to me, man, say what you mean and mean what you say. And what happens now is so many people in Hollywood, you know, they'll say come like so, they'll come out and they'll, hey, I don't think conservatives are evil. How dare you? Let's get him. That kind
Yeah, you're done. Get out.
yeah, and that's exactly what happens. So I like the fact that Frank Oz, he's in his 70s, and he was like, you know what, I'm not going to go for it. I'm not going for this agenda. I'm not against gay people. If you're gay, I'm compassionate, and I definitely want you to live your life and live your truth. But I created this character, and I didn't create a gay character.
Right.
So I'm sorry if that bothers you, but that's the truth. But you know, it's admitted. I saw people. Someone tweeted at him. Admit it, Frank. You hate gay people. I was like, dude, that is so over the top. I was just like, yeah, and I was like, but that's the thing. We need more real men like Frank Oz to just, just go, hey man, this ain't what it is. You can keep tweeting at me and saying all this hateful stuff, but I'm standing by my beliefs. I don't hate anyone, but this is the truth. Deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I find great about all this is, can you imagine the uproar if, like, you inserted a character into Marvel, into a Marvel comic, and it was like, come on my Christian journey with me, right? like can you the idea it's like, you know what? I've been doing a lot of soul searching. I'm an 11-year-old boy, and I found out that I'm hetero. It's like, and come on my hetero journey with me. They'd lose their minds. They'd lose their minds if you had a character specifically appealing to what is considered like heteronormative cis culture or whatever, or Christian culture, Christian majority culture. Like, even though that would appeal to a much broader audience, and when I say appeal to them, I don't mean like, oh, I want to buy it because it's a Christian kid. It's like, no, but the majority of American kids are raised with some level of church involved, and so they would identify with this character more on a much higher scale than they would identify with like a little trans character, just because by percentage alone. But the idea. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, especially when we're on Twitter. Twitter is so toxic, and I noticed like when I was obviously appearing with Ethan for these last say 60 days, I have noticed my life has changed a little bit, and my profile has gone up a little bit. So all these people are adding me. It's like, how can you as a black man be in Comicsgate? You're a coon. Ethan's a white supremacist. How can you do this? And I was just like, you and I just don't agree on this. This is something, no one co-opted me. I'm not being forced to say anything. It was like, I believe everything that comes out of my mouth are my words. No one has forced me. Ethan didn't say, hey, if you don't say this when we're on stream, then you can't come back on.
No,
So
don't lie. Ethan's got the keys to the Indiegogo, and he gets the check first. And if you step out of line, it goes straight into Cyberfrog, and you know it.
yeah, man, hey, I got to. He's like the Godfather. I just need a little taste. We need to wet our beak a little bit. Yeah, so, but I notice a lot of these little soy boys when they come at me on Twitter. You go on their page, and it's got the pronoun, that their preferred pronoun. And all that.
Oh,
I was like, when did we start doing this? I am he, her, they, she, her, and I was just like, okay, you're a woman. Of course you're a her. I don't
my
know. I know you're not supposed to say that, but God, it's so
no,
stupid now.
my phrase is pronouns in the bio is all you need to know.
Yeah, as soon as
That's
I
it.
see that, I already know. I said, okay, I already know where you getting down now. I know how you coming. I was like, you've been indoctrinated. You are literally drinking the Kool-Aid. The Hale Bop comet is coming back. So that is what it is.
Here,
So
let me hit a couple of these chats. Cormoran says Batman is a Jew. We've seen his batawang. That's a little uncouth, sir. We've got Joskby says, just popping in while loading my fuel truck. Keep up the good show, man. Sad I missed out last stream. I watched it earlier today. Woo wee. thanks for tuning in for that, because man, that was a little bit of fun. Alex G or G says, you in your drawers for this one, Antonio.
sure, if that makes you happy. Like, yeah, he asked me that every stream. I was like, "Am I in my drawers?" And I'm like, no, because I was on mic and I had my boxers on, and
Sure.
they were like, Antonio's in his drawers, and I was like, I'm wearing some boxer shorts, yes, and I'm wearing shorts now. I actually have, I have shorts on, and I'm like, dude, I'm in boxer shorts. I'm not butt naked. I'm not butt naked. Although I have streamed butt naked a few times, but obviously the camera is on. So
That's for the top level Patreon, right?
yeah. When we're doing a sexy party, sometimes I'm laying in bed and I'm naked, and me and Sasha are talking crazy, doing our thing. So sexy party. So I'm doing that. So. Mhm.
The Diggus says, reminder that my country acknowledged video games as high art recently, removing the censorship of Nazi imagery. Much love. Greetings from Germany. Oh, good job, Germany. Happy to have you on stream, buddy. Super Iron Bob says, Rekieta Law 2018, quote, I wore jeggings when growing up. That is not true. That is not true, sir. Bagel Goose says, the Frog Father. Great Loner says FB. And guys, I told you I'm not drinking tonight. Plus, I'm long out of Fireball. That disgusting swill of a drink is not in my presence. Cars in Depth said, would Marvel have Ben Grimm be an Orthodox Jew?
Well, I know Ben Grimm is Jewish. They've done that. There was a story. What was a couple years? I can't remember who the writer was on that one. Where they had Ben Grimm inherit a bunch of money. They made him like this multimillionaire, and they had him kind of like he had the top hat on. He had like a big diamond ring on his finger and all this kind of stuff. But he was Jewish, and I know in Dan Slott's run, he's marrying Alicia Masters, and I saw he had the yarmulke on and everything. So they're still going. I just don't. I think there is a difference between just being a Jewish or Orthodox Jewish or whatever, or is that Hasidic or whatever? Obviously I know there's different. Like I said, I know Ben Grimm is definitely still Jewish, so I don't know if that answers the question though, but he's definitely still Jewish. So.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like I said,
Yeah, he's definitely
I'm
still Jewish, but I just like I said, I don't know if that means he has to practice a certain way or whatever. Um,
okay. So Zebulon Pike says, and sorry I missed this earlier, buddy. SJW Marvel correlates with the Disney takeover. Target audience became Disney tweens instead of longtime loyal readers. Of course, there's blowback, and I think there may be something to that. I think there may be something to that. To bring up a super evil racist, Glenn Beck, often before this is I used to listen to Glenn Beck years ago
yeah, me too.
before Marvel was purchased by Disney. He used to talk about Disney's other properties on the news. They own, do they own CNN or ABC? It's one of the alphabet companies, but he would always say Disney is all about protect the mouse, right? You got to protect the mouse, and if something threatens the mouse, that's got to go. And he used to frame it as why you would find media bias, or why you would find the media refusing to address some of the more controversial issues, is because they're focused on protecting the mouse, and making people mad puts the mouse in jeopardy, was his whole thing. But I think that does apply somewhat to Marvel, that they have to tread a fine line because it is now a Disney property. But what's interesting about that is they're going the opposite way that I would go if I was trying to protect the mouse.
Well, you can see, at least as far as Disney owning ESPN. Now that's a sports property, and you can see how they've kind of subtly inserted left-leaning agenda based. That even I was like, man, it's a sports network, and you can tell. Obviously, what was it? Jamel Hill. She had said some things about Trump, but obviously she's out of there now. Um,
When
they
you got even during the Olympics, you'd have Bob Costas with his little opinion pieces, or what was it, Super Bowl? Like during the Super Bowl halftime show, they had like a big social justice monologue that happened. It's like, who,
Yeah,
what are we doing
just
here? This is football.
they
Who
have to
cares?
they have to re-educate all of us Trump people, and they have to teach. I saw what was it right after Trump got elected, um, and the new football season came in. I saw that they had I think this is still on YouTube, where they had John Cena go. They had John Cena do this big opening monologue. We're all people and all races and all colors. Blah blah blah. We demonstrate. And he's like walking down the street, and hey, we include everybody. Let's play some football.
It's
I'm
like,
gonna
yeah, shut up and yell, muscle man.
yeah. And I was just like, it's that kind of stuff, and I was like, um, you you see this stuff now, and Ethan actually said something that was very telling. When Obama got elected, they Marvel commemorated it with they had a Spider-Man cover with Obama on the cover. You notice they haven't done a President Trump Spider-Man cover or any, so it's kind of that's very telling
Well, they
about
they they did. It was in that new Captain America run. He
oh yeah,
was,
he's the bad guy though.
yeah, that was
So
in full honor of Donald Trump. All the love they could give him.
yeah, I just that's what I'm saying. So it's you can see that instead of just doing their job and creating content for their audience, that they're trying to shift and indoctrinate people. And if you don't speak that language, if you're not saying these certain things, then you know. That's what it is. Then you're a bigot. Oh, how dare you actually support the president? That's not Obama or any other. Or Hillary. Hillary should want. All this kind of thing. So I just I reject stuff like that. I feel like even being a conservative, I support the president on the things that I agree with. And if he says something that I don't agree with, then I'm critical of that. But I would still I obviously don't want the president of the United States to fail. We're all Americans, and if you have a bad president or president with bad policies, it's going to hurt everybody. You're going to see a lot of people unemployed. Obviously, I'm making more money under Trump than so I'm doing okay. I'm happy. It's nice to look at my bank account and see a little padding in there. I'm happy with that. So
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
and I wanted to talk to you about that because so I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I mean, where do you see what do you see the comics industry doing as we progress, right? Because you've been working on this story for 20 years. Did you ever pitch it to the big two or try and do that route, or did you just go like, did you see the writing on the wall and you're like, no, we got to go independent, or how'd you get there? Because you're in the wave of this these creators coming up, and I mean I'm wanting to talk to everybody on this. I'm hoping maybe I can put a big panel together because I see that we've got the ability now to disrupt these traditional distribution systems, right? We've broken past the gatekeeper. I was arguing with some dummy on Twitter, and I'm sorry I'm bouncing around on this, but some dumb comics guy who's like, no, you've never had to. There's never been gatekeeping in comics. Look at all these guys who produced an independent comic, and then of course he'll show these examples of guys who sold crappy printed comics to people on the street, and then eventually like either made a publishing house or something. But it's not like today where you've got Ethan Van Sciver pulling in hundreds of thousands of dollars. You got Diversity in Comics doing hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've got you pulling in almost 50 grand so far, and hopefully a lot more to come. Like we've got this thing. So what's it like being, I guess, on the precipice of this transition, right? We're transitioning the market. What's it like being there, and then what do you see going forward? How does this all end up? Sorry, that's like 12,000 questions, but
Well, I definitely wanted to unpack some of what you said because I definitely had thought about trying to get at like I was like maybe like an IDW or maybe Image, obviously because Kanan had some connections over at Top Cow. So they did the Sun Shaolin book that he put out. So I was really thinking about that, and as I kind of put some feelers out, it seemed like anybody was interested. I was like, well, you know what, I can do this myself. So obviously I started uh, setting everything up, and like I said, this was the third try here. The other two times we failed to raise the capital. Obviously, we have massively succeeded this time, thanks to a little help from Uncle E. So definitely, it's interesting to be in this community, at least from this perspective, to actually be able to talk to a Richard C. Meyer, to actually be able to talk to Ethan Van Sciver or Mike S. Miller or John Malin or Doug TenNapel, any of these big Comicsgate creators, that have had massive success, or even people that are coming over now, like say Art T. Bear. I know his project's done about 25,000 so far and going. So it's definitely um, I see, at least from the comic pros side, those guys are scared. That's why they keep attacking Comicsgate people. That's why they keep saying, "Oh, the books. I see that they have some art, but there's no writers over there." And I was like, Chuck Dixon's working on a couple projects over here. I'm pretty sure he's going to be writing Ethan's book Fearsome with Kanan. Kanan White and him are going to be doing that together. I know Chuck was on the other day. It looks like that. I don't know if they've signed that. I know Dave Sims that uh, wrote Cerebus. I know he's working with Ethan on the Cyberfrog projects that he's doing. So I mean, to see creators like that, I know Mike Barron is also been over here, and so I'm sitting there going, man, um, you guys have pushed, and there's so many people that are in the closet as far as being conservative, that are, I've talked to some of these people that are comic pros that you would know. They're like, hey, I'm nervous about coming out, because I'm still getting mainstream work, so I don't want to full out claim Comicsgate. um Actually, I would say that the person that is going to do the lettering on my book is a conservative, but I actually lost my colorist once I, uh, was officially in Comicsgate, I guess. And he does some work, and he's a nice guy. He just didn't want to, it's like, hey, I don't want to be associated with Comicsgate. And then I lost my letterer, and then I hired another letterer, and he's like, well, I'll do it, but I don't want my name on it. So we're gonna, have a little pen name for him,
Right.
a little
Yeah.
pseudonym, for him. So, because a lot of times people, I talked to this person, and he was like, if these people found out who I voted for, then a lot of this work would dry up that I'm getting. And I was like, that's a shame, because if you haven't been done anything, if you've been kind to people, you treat people with respect, the fact that you differ politically shouldn't matter. Uh, all that should matter is if you're qualified to do the job.
Yeah,
So,
and do you put out good work? Like what happened? What happened? Like if I only bought media from people I agreed with politically, I'd just be paying myself. There's no one on earth who matches all of my beliefs. Not a soul. And where did we get? How did we get here? Like, because you're polite. I'm I'm like, do these idiots realize that the person making their sandwich, if they adhered to the same standards, wouldn't make them a sandwich, right? They wouldn't make them a sandwich. They wouldn't sell them a car. They wouldn't sell them a movie ticket. They wouldn't pour their drink at the bar. They wouldn't do it, because if they had to only have this ideological purity test, and I don't know what it is about art where they think that they can do this in art, and it's just like not a business or whatever. But everything else. They have to serve me at a restaurant, but I don't have to. I don't have to make a comic type thing. It's ludicrous. I don't know how we got here, but it drives me nuts, man. It's
well,
sorry.
let me say, I saw someone in the chat, and they was like, the difference between the left and the right is the right will buy art from the left if it's good. Ryan English, and I agree with that. Here's the thing: I used to buy Mark Waid's work. I used to buy Kurt Busiek's work, and then they're so, especially after Trump got elected, they just started being such assholes online, that it just it just made it very difficult and very toxic for, I was like, it I was conflicted at first, because I was like, Mark Waid's an asshole, but he wrote Kingdom Come. It's one
Right.
of the greatest comic book stories ever written. I was like, Kingdom Come's one of the, it's like a top 20. It's one of those stories like Watchmen for me. It's Dark Knight Returns. It's in that, it's in that upper echelon of,
Right.
it's the perfect, because some people say, oh, well, that was Alex Ross. And I was like, yeah, Alex Ross obviously did breathtaking work for that. But if Mark Waid didn't give that great script and help push that story forward, then you would have had that's one thing when we were talking about earlier. I got a bunch of those Image books. And I notice I don't reread them a lot because the art is beautiful in those books, but the story wasn't very good. It's like they don't it seems like when you have that perfect mix, like say Frank Miller and Chris Claremont when they did the Wolverine miniseries, where the art's perfect and the script is perfect, and it
Right.
just stands the test of time. You know, that's a book that I can go back to 20 years from now and keep it reading and enjoying. And that's what a Kingdom Come is for me, or Kurt Busiek with Alex Ross on Marvels. But Kurt is such a jackass online. I love that he changed, Kurt Busiek resists. I was like, well, keep resisting, Kurt.
You're gonna resist sales pretty soon, buddy.
yeah, yeah. You're resisting the sales right now. That's exactly it. That's what it is. And I know just having the opportunity to talk to Ethan, I, uh, he's right. He said you have to monetize these SJWs, man, when they come at you. So, with this whole thing with Brett Booth, you know, I've noticed, we've done almost $1,000 in the last few days since he started this shit. And I was just like, all right, Brett. I mean, like I said, I had some negative stuff happen, where people were coming at me and saying awful things, and I had to block some people. But most people were like, hey, Brett, you just put this book on my radar, sugar, sugar. And then they
Yeah.
go and buy the book. So I definitely appreciate that. So that's like I said, so I'm with Ethan. Let's monetize these SJWs. Let's hook that horse and put that plow hitch on them and get them to plow. Get that monetary field going. So there you
Absolutely, absolutely, because that's the weapon, right? That's the spice that we've been lacking in all of the prior movements. I was thinking about this today. I'm like, man, I am doing comics videos, like several of them a week, and my channel's about law, but my channel's also about free speech, and this is where the war on free speech is like it's the war on free speech is everywhere, but the war on free speech in comics is happening. It's like people are fighting it on both sides. And so here I am looking at this stuff and thinking, like, yes, we have to monetize it because this is what Gamergate was missing. Gamergate was missing the ability to take all of the slander, all of the lies, and point it towards projects that people could support because the gaming industry is, I mean, in some ways you can do something similar to the comics industry, but not fast enough, right? You can't get one guy making a game fast enough to get a solid project, or at least you couldn't in 2015. It's getting different with apps and all that now, as that community grows. But Gamergate missed that boat, and they missed the time to brand it. Comicsgate has hit it, and it's the only answer. It's the only antidote to these guys trying to take your jobs because they're when we say take the jobs, they're kicking guys out of the industry. Like you said, you've got your letterer can't be named in your book because to do so, are you now or have you ever been a member of the Conservative Party for that guy?
yeah.
It's a real thing, which just a couple decades ago, these guys would have been screaming bloody murder for the same sort of tactics. So the only solution is to take these individual products, to put them in front of people, let them decide to buy it. And if they're buying it on ideology, if they're buying it on quality, the next book is going to determine partly what's going on, but just the opportunity to put yourself in the eyes of the customer is the most valuable thing. And really, you have to monetize it. It's not a scam. It's not a racket because there's no alternative. There's no plan B. Plan B is closed because plan B is an ivory tower behind a gate, and the guy at the top of the ivory tower just says no, and you don't get in.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's the thing. It's all groupthink. You're not allowed to be an individual. Perfect example is that is someone like Donald DeLay, who came into Comicsgate. He'd done a project over at Image, and he had reached out to Richard C. Meyer. He was like, you know what? Everybody keeps saying you're like alt right and Nazi and stuff. He's like, I've been watching your videos. You don't seem like such a bad guy.
Right.
And boy, that was the worst thing he could have ever said, because the narrative is Richard C. Meyer is an alt right Nazi. He hates people. He's gay. He's homophobic. All this kind of thing. Gay and trans creators. He harasses women. That's the narrative. You got to stick to that. So actually going, you know what? I don't actually think he's a bad guy. How dare you? All of a sudden, he's getting blocked and unfollowed, and the writer on the book that he was on was like, I'll never work with him again, blah blah blah. And it was just like, and now he's got Brutus the Badass on Indiegogo, nearing 20 grand or whatever. So it's like, he's doing his thing. So I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's see. We've covered the scandal, the big scandal, you woman hating monster.
Yes, yes.
So here's the interesting thing. Do you want to talk? Can you tell me about the cover a little bit? Because uh, is the violence against women thing just because of the shirt and the context of yeah, bringing it up again. Is it just because of the context of the cover? The cover that got scrapped from the book. I can't remember what it's called because I'm so out of the loop on comics and I'm trying to catch up. But uh, is that it? Just the context, or is the character actually like a woman murdering character specifically? Like what's the story here? The real story. Like what's the O'Reilly factor? We're in the no spin zone, you pinheads.
We're in the no spin zone. Um, well, Santana just kills people. He doesn't target
Wait,
women.
but he kills women,
He does kill women, but
so
he
he
kills a
hates
lot of
women.
men
Okay,
too.
got it.
And that's the thing that someone was saying, oh, so you perpetuating violence against women, and I was like. I was like, actually, you see men die in various media all the time, and no one cares.
Yeah,
No
did you
one.
see Hardcore Henry? That movie Hardcore Henry?
No, no, I did not.
Okay, so Hardcore Henry is it's the first feature-length film I think to be shot entirely in a first-person perspective. So they did the whole film with like a GoPro attached to a guy, and so he's basically he's like almost killed, and then he's brought back with all these bionetic enhancements or whatever, and he goes on just this murder spree, and it's like a first-person shooter put on film. The story is there, but who cares? Because it's 90 minutes of guns and punching people like so hard that they explode and all that stuff and blowing up stuff. It's great. It's awesome. It's a thrill ride. That's all it is, and that's all it needs to be. So he kills like 50, 100 guys in this movie, but there's one scene where he runs through like a strip club with a bunch of cloned women strippers and he kills some of them. And they're like, look at Hardcore Henry promoting violence against women. It's like, what are you talking about? He's got like a 5-to-1 death ratio of men to women. But
Yeah,
that's how they look at this stuff. It's wild.
and that's the thing. It kind of reminds me of Gail Simone with her former blog where she I think it was called Women in the Refrigerators, where it was based on, if I'm not mistaken, Kyle Rayner had came home and a villain had killed his girlfriend and stuffed her in the refrigerator, and she just started going on this tangent about how women are used as props in comics books and all this kind of stuff. I was like, there's all kind of men that get killed in comic books, but no one cares because they're men. You know,
Yeah.
it's like so when the villain, like when the Joker kills a man, it's okay because even though it's violence and everything, oh, it's just a man. Men are violent anyway. They're all this kind of thing. If the Joker kills a woman, oh my God, he committed violence against women, and that's why there's these people trying to take classic stories like the Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. And they're like, well, maybe when you guys re-release it, you should edit that part out where the Joker shoots Barbara Gordon in the spine and paralyzes her, and all that, takes naked pictures of her and does all that, that whole thing. Uh, it's like that is such a classic story. I'm very glad I have my copy of it. I'd hate to think, say in 15, 20 years, that they'll be, it's like when they try to re-release those old Tom Sawyers and stuff like that, and they cut those, they try to cut some of those words out or re-edit.
Right, To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
To
I was
Kill a
like,
Mockingbird's a really important story when you take out the racism.
that's that's the thing. So I'm sitting here like, this is ridiculous. These people, have no context. You can't change history. It is what it is. So I just, like I said, I would just caution to slow down a little bit and maybe we should use our brains for God's sakes, man. It's like, try to change how it's I did a video a couple months ago. DC was collecting some of the old Captain Marvel Shazam now because they don't want to keep saying Captain Marvel, but he'll always be that's the Captain. But when people say Captain Marvel, I think of Billy Batson. There's aspects of Billy Batson which will be revealed in Brand. Obviously, I won't put those out until the book comes out, but there are some Billy Batson type aspects to, the world that I have created where people. Well, that's why you see the characters like hulking up and doing little things like that. But Captain Marvel, they were going through some of the old late 30s 1940s stuff, and there was some stuff. I guess it showed Asian people in a certain light, but a lot of those old like World War II era books, obviously we were against the Japanese at that time, so
Yeah, there's
obviously they
something
weren't.
happening.
Yeah, it's like, hey, they're our buddies now, So I'm sitting there going, okay, if you're those are classic stories, and I was disappointed that DC caved and was like, well, even though they had pretty much done all the work, all they needed to do was they had spent all the money getting those art files cleaned and recolored, and they were gonna, it was gonna be a bound, nice, beautiful edition that I would have been very happy to own. And people started going, hey, this is racist, you got to get to, all this kind of stuff. And then they say, okay, in light of this, we believe that we're not going to put this book out now, even though they've been promoting it for months. So it's unfortunate that they caved. They shouldn't have. And I worry for DC. DC has got a small cancer growing in their ranks. Marvel has been fully infested.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
They're
I don't.
stage 4 terminal now.
That, yeah, exactly. And Ethan, everybody asked Ethan what his solution is, and he was like, hey, I'd go in there and I'd just fire them all. It was like, and I'd start from scratch, and bring in creators that actually want to just sell books and care about the fans, and they're not abusing and attacking the fans online.
Yeah,
You
that I mean that blows my mind. And I want to talk about that, but first, you mentioned something. You mentioned Japan in World War II, and
know?
so I have to. It's actually my personal oath whenever this is brought up to remind people that the hero of these people who are complaining about the portrayal of Japanese characters in 1940s and 50s literature. The hero of these people is FDR, the man who took Asians and put them in concentration camps, stole their farms, and gave it to white people. And FDR, the man who stands for nothing. Just remember that. Just remember that. That guy is a dirtbag. He's widely regarded as America's best president by so many people. and he did one of the most overtly racist and disgusting things. While we're fighting to keep Jews out of camps, he put Japanese people in camps and took everything they owned. So let's just remember that, because that man stands for nothing. But
one of those people that he put in the internment camps was
George
Mr. Suga
Takei.
himself. George Takei was one of those people that was in the internment camp. So yeah,
Yeah, and again, I wonder if he thinks FDR was a great president. But so I want to talk about this thing because so this has been just baffling and mind-blowing to me. Is I come into this thing with Waid versus Meyer, and I understand, Waid obviously I think has been wrong the entire time, but I understand the business aspect of Waid attacking Meyer. I understand the business aspect of the local comic shops on Facebook conspiring to keep Meyer and Antarctic Press out of the stores if they release Jawbreakers. I get it. Like they're wrong, absolutely, but I get the business to business conflict. What blew me away, and I'm still not processing, is how horrifying these people treat their fans. Like I can't get over it. Like, you're just a racist horror. I don't want you to buy my books. I mean, if you're in my company, you're fired immediately. I don't care if you're the best artist, the best writer in history. You tell someone you don't want them to buy the product that I'm selling, get out. Get out. Can you help me with this? Because I don't get it at all.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I've literally seen fans go, or pros go, hey, if you voted for Donald Trump, you could just unfriend me now or unfollow me. I don't want your business. You're on the wrong side of history. I've seen that, and I was like, you're talking to paying customers. One thing I can say about Comicsgate, these people buy comics.
Yes.
But you know what? My book is not just made for Comicsgate people. It's made for everybody. I'm not trying to. If you don't support Comicsgate, but you look at brand and you go, this looks pretty cool, then I encourage you to pick up a copy. We'd love to have you. You're not going to be inundated. I'm not trying to indoctrinate you within this Comicsgate cult. I'm just trying to tell a fun story, and hopefully the fans respond to it, and then they come back for the next book and the next book and the next book. That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah, because that's the goal, is sell books, tell stories. I mean, what pure motive is there than that? You don't want to sell books to just, I mean, Comicsgate is this is what I mentioned this earlier. This is one thing I really want to start talking more about. Comicsgate is an insular internet community, right? Diversity in Comics built a platform and marketed a product to people who like him and have faith in what he does. Ethan Van Sciver built a platform and marketed a product to people who have faith in him and faith in what he does. That's what Comicsgate has been doing, because it's an effective model to make money, to build capital, to build public trust, to get your name out there. But people think that Comicsgate is about selling to Comicsgate fans. It's not. Comicsgate is about selling books and telling stories. And we've got this way to do it that's never been doable before, because we have this active audience that's there. But this is the difference between Comicsgate and Marvel and DC and these other creators that are like, no, I want to only sell to a limited aspect. It doesn't make any business sense. I mean, just because we can disrupt markets through microcosmic communities doesn't mean we want to stick with that community. You want as broad a net as possible to pull people in, and leveraging the momentum that Comicsgate provides is a great way to get your book out there, to get it in front of more and more people, and hopefully start building up that fan base. Like I was talking to again another guy on Twitter who says he's an independent comic artist. I don't know anything about any of these people. Some of you may know who it was, but I don't remember his name. He had like 130 Twitter followers, and he does a comic, I guess, or he's working on a comic called The Night Watch, which is a little weird because Marvel has a comic called Night Watch, and so good luck to him with that. I don't know how that's going to turn out, but he was like, he's sitting here insulting his fans and stuff, and I'm like, this is not a good way to sell comic books. And he says, that's not my job. He says, that's the publisher's job to sell the comic books. It's just my job to make them.
Like, sounds like him and Aubrey Citizen have been sitting down and like stroking each other off or something, because that's clearly dumb think. If you're working on a book, like say for IDW, and then you go out and you insult a lot of the people that are paying for your book, then your book gets quote unquote canceled, because you have cost the company quite a bit of money. IDW is bleeding money. They're leaking like a sieve. They can't. You know what I'm saying? Although I saw that Marvel leased out Spider-Man to them to write some kind of children's Spider-Man book or some kind of thing. I saw, so they'll start push. And I honestly think, and I heard Ethan mentioning this as well, where he thinks Disney is just going to start strip mining Marvel for the characters, and like let companies like IDW put those books out, because they're, right now Marvel's a loss leader. They're not making the kind of money that they used to be able to make on these books. That's why they're putting out books that they're over shipping books to retailers that they don't want. And then, like when we've got to make sure this Iceman 1 relaunch is successful, and then you see the fans going to comic book stores and they're taking pictures of like 25, 30 copies of Iceman just stuck there. You see them with piles of Iceman, or that West Coast Avengers SJW relaunch, and it's not selling, so they mark it down to $2. They're like, hey, $2, if you please take my wife, please, this kind of thing, so nobody's buying the book. So when you see stuff like that, and again, if you don't want to support stuff like, oh, you guys are Nazis, you're alt-right leaning, because you want to discriminate against women and people of color, and that's what it is. So I'm sure I can speak more with my attorney, Mr. Eigel, and he will, he could probably give me some advice on how to proceed with that, as he is also part of Mark Waid's legal team.
Hey, if with friends like Jamal Eigel giving you legal advice, who even needs enemies like Richard C. Meyer suing you?
That's what I was saying. I was like, man, I cannot wait until they announce quote unquote. I suspect this is going to be settled eventually, as we might go into a little quote unquote discovery, and that's
I can't.
that.
I can't imagine. So I've been, I've been thinking about this. I've been talking about this quite a bit. It's got to go to Discover. It's got to go. It's got to get settled. It's got to get settled before Discovery, if they've got any brains. One, because if you guys don't know this, like, I know lawsuits are this magic thing that happens, and but it happens in phases, and lawyers bill in phases. You've got your initial retainer. When you're talking federal cases, you're probably talking an initial retainer of 10 to 15 grand for something like this, based on what kind of attorney you've got. Waid's attorney is a real high price guy.
Yeah.
So it could be more than that. I don't know. But so you put this cash down and they bill against it. For example, Waid's attorney last year said his rate was over $7.25 an hour. So if he's at $7.50 an hour, and Waid puts down, we'll say 15 grand, that's 20 hours of work. That's just 20 hours of work. That's half a week. If he's writing a document, if he's writing an answer, let's we can break this down. Meyer's complaint is 11 pages. All right. So he's got to get the complaint. He's got to read it. Now he's got to go through the claims. He's got to write up an answer. The answer won't take that long, but then he's got to start phrasing, there's some strategy goes into the answer that you want to get it so that you can try and get a dismissal or a summary judgment thing, which means that you can't disagree with certain parts that are really important. But more on that later. So he's got to craft this response document. You're talking at a minimum, he's spending probably 3 hours crafting a response, maybe longer, because this is a federal case. And you can't just say no to everything. I mean, even if you end up just saying no to everything, you can't just do that as a matter of course. It takes time. Then he's probably already crafting motions. He's already taking phone calls. He's already sending emails and calling the other attorney. This stuff all ticks up. Every phone call, even if he gets a text message, is a 1/10 of an hour that he's building. So if he and Mark exchange 20 texts, that's that's 2 hours of work. That's 2 hours of work that he's billing. That's $1,500 or $1,300. My math. No, it's $1,500 at $7.50 an hour.
It's a whole lot of money.
It adds up so fast that retainer will go away. Discovery. Think about Discovery. How many videos does Zach Meyer have? Like, or was that Richard Meyer? Richard Meyer.
Yeah.
Like hundreds, maybe even 1,000. I think they said 1,300 videos. They're what, like 40 minutes? You think Mark Zaid is gonna sit and watch a 40-minute video for free because he wants to, when he's looking for evidence? Discovery is gonna cost $30,000.
Like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I know Ethan had said he talked to Richard, and Richard, because people were talking about setting up a GoFundMe or something to help pay for this lawsuit, and right now, Richard was like, hey, everything's cool, but maybe later or something, but appreciate it. And but he was talking, Ethan said that he just dropped these like mind-boggling figures about how much it was costing to start this process. Not to mention this started a couple months ago when so it's been going on for a while. So I'm sure he has racked up some nice legal bills, but I think he's got a pretty strong case, and I think Mr. Waid will be compensating his lawyer and and paying some damages and all that. So.
Yeah, and that's why he's got to settle. He's got to settle because, one, if he loses, the minimum amount he's going to lose is whatever damage Meyer had directly. And that is not necessarily 75 grand. It might be less than that. But that's his initial loss. Second, this is tortious interference with a contract in Texas, which means he could have exemplary damages, which triple the result. That's massive. Then he might get attorney's fees. And in reality, the attorney's fees may end up being more than the damage that he suffered in the first place, because Discovery is going to be expensive for both parties, because on Discovery, they're going to be going through emails that Waid has ever exchanged with Antarctic Press. Any communications they've ever had are going to be open to Discovery. Waid says he's been friends with this guy for a long time, used to work with him or something like that. So, I mean, we're talking about just tons of stuff. And some people are asking, will Marvel take over the bill? Guys, think about it. Does Marvel really want to pay $150,000? Because if Marvel's on the bill, trust me, whoever is counsel for Mark Waid will be running that clock into the ground.
Exactly. To someone that's not even technically an employee. He's an independent contractor there. He doesn't have an exclusive deal with Marvel.
Yeah. So there's if you've got a big backer with the kind of money that Disney and Marvel have, as an attorney, I'm sorry, the way it works out is, guys, they're going to do more work. They're going to work on that case all day, and that bill will go from 50 to 150,000 because they're going to just focus on it. And Marvel knows this. Are they going to pay his bill? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. But he's got to settle, because the risk is basically he either pays Meyer his damages, or he pays his attorney and ends up risking paying for Meyer's damages and Meyer's attorney as well. All of those things come down. And it's the difference between, I don't know what Meyer's asking for, but let's say he asks for 75 grand because that's what's in the complaints. Like, you pay me 75 grand, this thing goes away. If he doesn't pay the 75 grand, he's going to pay his attorney, if this thing goes to trial, will be $50,000. I promise you that is an easy figure to reach in federal court. You're looking at potentially $150,000, $200,000 of legal fees, but $50,000 easy if it goes to trial. Plus, you've got the potential to pay Meyer's attorney another 50 grand, plus whatever you lose. Even if you win, Meyer's bringing the claim in good faith. I don't think Meyer's paying Waid's attorneys anything, even if he loses, just based on everything here. Plus, Texas is not an anti-slap state, so Waid cannot countersue Meyer for a slap violation, saying that Meyer is trying to silence his speech. So that's a huge blow to Waid's defense as well. If this were in California, it'd be a different story, and Meyer might not have wanted to bring it. But he gets to bring it in Texas because that's where the damage is. So, I mean, there's a lot going into this. Waid has to settle. He has to. And I think we're going to see it soon. Because if his lawyer's going to be telling him that.
Yeah, I see all the pros like Gail and Max Saggio and everything. They're like, oh, this is gonna be slam dunk, and I'm sitting there going, really? Are you that blind to not realize there's a reason he shut up and went off social media for a while after everything went down, because he was like, oh boy, I really may have made a mistake here.
Yeah, absolutely.
He realized.
And I mean, these people, none of these people have the money to do this. Nope, nobody does. Nobody does unless you're a CEO of a massive corporation that's footing the bill. Sure, you've got the money to run these lawsuits, but normal people don't. And Mark Waid doesn't. No matter what his net worth says online, I think it says $2 million. That's probably based on absolutely nothing. Maybe whatever property they can find that's publicly registered to him. But whatever it is, Mark Waid has become accustomed to his standard of living at the income that he's at. Unless his income massively, dramatically increases, he can't afford it because people don't work that way. Unless he's like a Warren Buffett hermit who lives well below his means, he doesn't have a stockpile of cash to fork this out. So he's going to be looking at a huge debt bill, or he's just not going to be able to pay. It's simple math here. And the math is, can I afford this, or do I settle? But we'll see. He may want to take up the mantle. That's the one thing I keep going back to. I'm like, is this dummy going to be stupid enough to take up his white knight mantle and demand that he has to defend the integrity of anti-Comicsgate and put Meyer in his place? And that if he settles, it's going to look bad for the movement. And Waid seems like the kind of guy who might take that knife or take that bullet, for the team. And that's the dumbest move he can possibly make, is to act on behalf of the movement. And dear Lord, I hope he does. I hope he does.
I just, like I said, I think it's pretty clear that he interfered, but I mean, he just doesn't seem to, obviously it's stubborn, and there is a lot of eyes watching this, because obviously a lot of people on our side are like, please settle, please have to apologize or something, and obviously there are people on the other side going, no, he's a slam dunk, he's gonna win this, so if this goes the way I obviously think it's going to be, it's going to be huge for Comicsgate as a whole, and so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, and I see some people in the chat talking about a GoFundMe for Waid, and he's talked about doing a GoFundMe for Waid. Just remember, his supporters don't even buy his comics.
Yeah, that's true.
You guys have been paying Mark Waid's salary for years, being comics fans, and you know the social justice crew doesn't buy the comics of their social justice artists. They don't. That's the funniest part of all this.
I'm sure Gail and Mags and Jamal and Kwanzaa, I'm sure they will all fall in line and fill the coffers up for Mr. Waid.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure all those broke artists, Mags, who has to crowdfund her transition surgeries, and isn't raising enough. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure she's gonna fork over 10 grand to help Wade out and to keep the anti-Comicsgate thing going. Right. The funny thing is, in Comicsgate, there are people who have made enough money to actually do that if they needed to. There are people who have made enough money where they could maybe contribute a good chunk of money to Meyer, because of the resources that they've recently acquired. And that's not saying that they have to or that they even should, but that's actually a possibility. On the other side, who is there? What millionaire writers are there on the Comic Pro side? The number is limited, and those guys tend to be quiet. The loud ones are not out there, making the loud ones are not the people on top making a bunch of money. Let me hit a couple of these. There are two super chats that came in. Reverend Hound, thanks, buddy. It says, if Wade settles, the SJWs will probably cannibalize him. And yeah, I mean, can you imagine? You didn't fight our battle for us. How dare you? Because the entire lives of these people have been other people fighting their battle and taking all of the risk for them. So they'll just not know what's going on. Shannon McDaniel says, just wanted to throw you a few dollars. Love you guys. Following Comicsgate and Rekieta religiously. Shout out to Uncle Ethan. He's a sweet guy and a fantastic artist, and he knows how to please his customers. Thank you so much, Shannon McDaniel. I really appreciate it. And yes, support these guys in Comicsgate. Support the creators, but support them because their work is worthy. I mean, support the movement if you want to, but support them because they're out there. You got guys like Antonio here. He's been working for 20 years on this project, which means nothing other than it's flushed out. If you listen to him talk about it, it's got passion behind it. It's got ideas. It's compelling. It's got all the stuff you want. It's got symbols you realize. It's turning them around, and it's you got it. When you've got a universe that's as fleshed out, even as he's laid out on stream, I'm automatically intrigued. So definitely support these guys in what they're doing. But
definitely, man.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, buddy. You want to talk about anything else for now, or I'm open, but we've covered all the subjects that I said we'd cover. So now it's like,
yeah, we didn't hit it. Yeah, we and if anybody has questions or whatever, they can obviously ask, and I would do my due diligence in trying to answer said question. But yeah, but I don't. I just, like I said, you've been very thorough. You hit everything, so I was just like, I don't know. We've actually been going for a couple of hours. I was like, man, the time like a drag. The stream's been going pretty. We've kept the conversation going. The audience has grown. I mean, over 450 people in the chat. I was like, wow, this thing is built as we went on.
Yeah, it's been just crescendoing here, crescendoing. Oh, we got chaotic neutral.
That's a good thing.
Absolutely. We got Chaotic Neutral Gaming says, this is something us in the Comicsgate have been waiting for their stupidity to hit them where it hurts. And isn't that great? Schadenfreude.
Yeah, let me see. Greg Zanti, is the sale still on at TeePublic? Yeah, I tweeted that out. I think that sale is over. It was like a 48-hour sale in my TeePublic store because, yeah, we had everything 30% off. Been selling a ton of those. Ask me about my feminist agenda shirts. Everybody's been going crazy. Like I said.
I gotta get this one here. Comic Book Bob says, real quick, Alternaween is ending in 28 minutes. Please support the only company that has openly backed Comicsgate. Definitely go, if you have not supported Alternaween, go do that. That's where Alterna Comics is giving people an option to get some comic books that they can put in kids' Halloween baskets instead of candy this year. Although I would say give the kids some candy too. But definitely go support that so they can make that a thing. They've been doing really well, and I know they were doing a final push for another stretch goal. So it's 28 minutes left. Keep the stream up, but open another tab. We're in 2018, guys. You can throw up another tab and go support them real quick.
Also, I just checked my TeePublic store. Everything is still 30% off. If you would like to get a shirt, you follow me on Twitter and stuff. Those links are there. and also on my YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. You can get you the Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda and all the other sweet brand merchandise that we have, the cups and the stickers and the prints and posters that are sold in the T Public store. I saw people been going crazy and really supporting that. So definitely thank you on that. Also see John Russell, other than cashing checks, what were you doing while writing your comic? Just curious. Well, like I said, I worked a lot of fast food. I was in management and fast food industry. Worked for, let me see, I worked for Hardee's, worked for Wendy's, I worked for Crystals. Let me see. You guys may not have Crystals. It's kind of like White Castles in the South.
Oh, sure.
So, yeah, they got the little slider burgers, which I love Crystals. So I worked for Crystals for like 4 years. Um, that kind of stuff. And then I also managed a couple of convenience stores. I actually got robbed a couple of times. That's that's fascinating when the guy whips the gun out on you. It's like, hey, uh, I was like, oh, it's party time. Never mind.
Right.
I know what that means, but I remember the first time I got robbed, the guy, pulled the gun out, and I was like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah.
And I was like, it was surreal. It's not like you see the robberies happen on TV and stuff, and it was strange. He's like, "Hey man," I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I need you to do me a favor." I go, "What's that, buddy?" He goes, "I need you to reach into your register and give me all your money." I started laughing. I started laughing. I said, "Get the fuck out of here! What are you doing?" And he's like, he pulled the gun out. He's like, "Hey man, I'm not fucking around here, bud. You need to." I was like, "Oh, you're really robbing me! Oh my!"
Yeah. Here you go.
I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, it blew me away. I was like, "Holy God, I cannot." Oh, you're really robbing me. Hurry up, buddy. Okay, let's get this thing cashed out. Yeah, and then yeah, like I said, I got robbed. I got robbed a couple times doing that kind of work. But thankful to God that I came out unscathed and unharmed every time. So
Man, there's something about having a gun pointed at your head, isn't there?
yeah. Mm.
Don't really wish that on anybody. It's a different kind of experience. Um, so I got a question from How's Your Father, and he says, if you were Wade's lawyer, how would you proceed if he refused to settle? And I'm gonna give you a teaser answer, and it's with cash up front. That's how I would proceed if he refused to settle. Um, Listen, the I think I'll probably do a video on this soon. I'm really hoping to get Wade's response, but I maybe I'll try and put out a video on it beforehand just to throw out some hypotheticals. But there are some defenses that Wade has. They're not super strong.
Is it
Uh,
is it the Chewbacca defense?
yeah, something like that. No, the defenses involve um, they involve him saying, basically trying to prove that he wasn't trying to interfere with a contract, or that he didn't know that a contract exists, or that a contract didn't exist under Texas law. All of these are long shots. The next thing is that he can try and assert that he had a right to contact Antarctic Press and tell them the truth, because the First Amendment free speech protections, as long as they're truthful, have been upheld in tortious interference cases, but it's always under sort of the auspice of them having a legal interest in asking a question. So, like, you're talking about a new employer calling an old employer and asking the old employer for information about a prospective employee. So then the old employer says, well, they were late 10 times in a 20-day period, so we had to let them go. And then the person suing them saying that that's tortious interference with the contract. Well, if that's truthful information, it's not tortious interference. That's how it's worked out in employment settings. There's not a big body of case law for someone calling up a company out of the blue and making claims that are quote unquote truthful. Now, he may have said truthful things about Meyer, or he might have said things that qualify as non-actionable opinions, like Meyer is a racist is probably not a defamatory statement under most circumstances because it's an opinion about who Meyer is. So that's not actionable. But that's not the same thing as a truthful factual statement. So Waid does have some defenses that are possible, but they're really not tested. There's not a big body of law that he'll be relying on. So guys, I'm telling you, Waid's lawyer, as he gets more information, if he doesn't have it already, will be counseling him to settle. And if he's not settling, he's going to say, look, then you got to put money down, because if we're going to trial, they'll probably have him sign a letter and everything that says, look, you have to recognize that this is a stinker of a case and we've advised you to settle, but you're going ahead anyway. And that's to cover their own selves with ethics violations. So I hope that helps. I don't want to sit and talk about it all day, because I probably want to do a video more thoroughly discussing it and go through it. But I'd rather just see Waid file an answer in the next couple days. But we'll see if he does. If he doesn't, I'll talk about what that's like too. But I'm gonna wait and see what happens. Captain Q asks if I've ever been threatened by a client. Yes, I have. Absolutely. You're dealing with people in very stressful situations. Some of the people are criminals, some are not. You're dealing with people who stand to lose thousands of dollars. You're dealing with people who are paying you quite a bit of money, and the risks are very high. So yeah, you get threatened from time to time, and that's okay. Or sometimes it's not okay, and you tell them to get lost, and then they have to go find another attorney. It all just depends on if the attorney-client relationship is preservable after the threat, how much you think they mean the threat, and if you think they're willing to act on it. But yes, I've been threatened by clients, absolutely. Not ever with death, but with physical violence and stuff like that. But comes with the job.
I can only imagine.
So how many people threaten you nowadays as a big swinging comics creator?
I've gotten a few. It's mostly just insults. It's people calling. I've been called a coon and Uncle Tom. People are just claiming that Ethan has brainwashed me and co-opted me into this movement.
Right, you can't be thinking for yourself. How dare you?
Of course not. I need these SJWs to save me. It's like, hey, he's got a minority over there. We've got to co-opt him and bring him back over. So I always find that stuff laughable, because, like I said, I've been conservative for over 20 years, so it's not something that I just hopped on. It's like, my mom was a Reagan Democrat. It's just, my dad, 23-year Army veteran. It's just the way, I was born in Alabama. I've been raised in Tennessee. Just, true son of the South. And it's just the way I am.
Yeah. So people are asking if Mark Waid could fire Zaid. I saw earlier, would he be able to turn down settlement? Yeah, Waid's in charge. Zaid will have to do whatever Waid wants. If Zaid's unwilling to do it, yeah, he could fire him. It's all, he's paying the bill, and as long as he's paying the bill and the attorney can move in good conscience, that he's not like defrauding the court or wasting the court's time, then he can do whatever Waid wants him to do. He does not have to take any sort of settlement. He could certainly, Waid could pay to take the thing all the way to trial. And he could certainly fire another attorney, or fire Zaid and hire another attorney if he doesn't like his advice. Absolutely. At this point, so there's a rule about leaving a case, leaving representation. And if you have not presented anything, if you have not represented yourself to the court as a representative of the client, then typically you can withdraw or be fired without any incident. If you start making representations and filings to the court, you may have to ask permission to leave. If he fired Zaid, could he get an extension? Probably. It kind of depends on the circumstances and if Meyer would agree to it or not. Or if Meyer said no, they could petition the judge for an extension, stuff like that. But this is all speculative about this stuff. And no, I cannot briefly explain how antitrust works in America. That's not a brief subject.
That's why I was like, everybody watches Law and Order, and they just get this like they think that it's so funny. Like, oh, I watched a couple of episodes of L.A. Law, and now I know the law. What's
Yeah.
the law?
Oh, Medium Giant asked if I passed the bar on my first try. Yes, I did. I absolutely did. I'm a very good test taker. Let me be very clear. Passing the bar, and people who do pass and who do fail the bar, is not a good indication on if they'll be a good attorney or not. The bar is a grind, and it's a test. If you're good at taking tests, you'll be good at taking the bar. And I'm very good at taking tests. I always have been. I did fine on my LSAT. I did fine on the bar. So yeah, I did fine on my Series 7 license. I did fine on my insurance licenses back when I was in the financial world. Yeah, so yes, I did. But don't let that fool you. And if you find out that a lawyer out there didn't pass the bar on their first try, that doesn't mean anything about whether or not they're a good lawyer. So.
I'm assuming you specialize in civil law, not criminal law.
No, I do criminal defense primarily.
Okay.
It's less work. The state has to do all the work up front, and we just get to say, nah, that's not true. So I like it. No, I do civil stuff. I hate it. It takes too much time. But the focus of my practice has been criminal defense and then business formation and contract, because that stuff's pretty easy and pays the bills. And I do a little bit of estate and trust stuff as well. Like I'll write gun trusts for people if they want to own machine guns and silencers and all that stuff.
New lawyer, excellent. Yeah, that's it. That's what it is, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to answer one more question. I think we should wind down. Captain Q, the only reason I'm going to answer this question is because I have a good answer. Why are so many lawyers Jewish? Is it because affirmative action and the preference of their own kin? No. I'm going to tell you to read Malcolm Gladwell's book, and everybody should read this book anyway, but I believe it's Outliers is the book. It's either Outliers or What the Dog Saw, where he talks about why Jewish lawyers rose to prominence in the late 70s and early 80s. They have not always been the prominent legal cast. Before the early 80s, it was actually largely white men. And it has to do a lot with the type of law that was practiced and the type of law that was profitable and who was doing it. But go check out that book. Outliers is a great book either way. And What the Dog Saw is also a great book. Gladwell tells stories, and those stories are good. So check those books out, and it'll answer your question for you. I'm not going to sit here and plagiarize his entire work, but it's a good thing to do. But yeah, what do you say we wrap this thing up? This has been a great stream.
Yeah, I had fun. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm gonna say goodbye to all of these people, but you stay on with me and we'll debrief real quick, just because I don't like cutting my guests off unless their name is Jason Youngblood and they're a giant pansy. But but we'll say goodbye to these guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Definitely go check out Antonio's stuff. It's linked in the description. And support him if you like the art, if you like the story. The concept sounds pretty cool to me. Go check it out. You can find his. I don't have the link to the shirts and stuff in the description yet, but I'll get those put up there. And if you like the shirts, buy the shirts. Support your creators, guys. Support them. Don't.
Yeah, definitely. And if anybody subscribes to my YouTube channel or follows me on Twitter or Instagram or on our Facebook page, you will definitely get those links and be inundated with me shilling for my merch. So please follow me.
Yeah, definitely. And his YouTube channel is also down in the description. Definitely check that out. I know I'm going to go watch some Gumbo videos and pretend I wasn't comparing my jambalaya to Gumbo for like 10 minutes. There's one final super chat from Shannon McDaniel. I love Better Call Saul. Wondering what you think of the show if you've seen it. I have.
Yeah, I love that show.
I have all of them, but I haven't actually watched them. I watched all of Breaking Bad. I haven't gotten around to watching Better Call Saul, but it's on my list. But I'll say, as a rule, I hate lawyer shows because they're all wrong. All of them. All of them are wrong all the time. But the trick is to watch those shows not for the legal stuff, and if the rest of it's entertaining, then it's good. But I'll have to watch some Better Call Saul and do like some reviews of it or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Anyways, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight. It was great to have you all here, and we'll see you soon. If you're still around, Russell Greer tomorrow. I'm going to see if I can set that up, but I'll tweet it out. The Russell Greer books, it's just brilliant. So anyways, thanks guys. You have a good night. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. All right.